But the other one squad car that I'm talking about, that was not treated right. That one, we are typically spending a lot more money on maintenance on, very similar to what I talked about, the one that we're replacing. Last year alone, we were spending close to $8,000 on that vehicle for maintenance, for replacing stuff as a result.
Page 34 of the budget book that you have lists the current squads that we have, years, mileage, estimated replacement years.
Maintenance-wise though, Chief, with the K-9,
So the K-9 vehicle, just looking at it right now, as of September, as of January 1st of this year, 2025, it had 97,656 miles on it, which was an increase of 23,000 miles on that vehicle. So that vehicle drove 23,000 miles last year. And then the maintenance on that vehicle, last year, looking at 24, just really had to do with, it had its alternator replaced, in addition to its oil changes. Regular, it had its alternators replaced, and then it also had 2 ignition coils, spark plugs, battery, and tire sensors that were replaced on that vehicle. And we're looking at that last one that I just talked about, that replacement of 2 ignition coils, spark plugs, and that was almost to the tune of just over $2,000 on that particular vehicle.
okay, thanks, Chief. I think that gives us some better perspective.
So what ended up happening with these vehicles, just to let you know, is that through the budget committee meetings that we had, we were challenging Chief in needing to replace so many vehicles and expensing that amount of money in one year. So that's where, if you remember Chief Bianchi, when he was here, he did do a lease purchase. And with that there's a prescribed amount then that is financed, and it is paid over a course of time. But what it doesn't do is it does not deplete our reserves, and it doesn't impact us, but it does put a debt out there for several years. So that is something that I've asked to just see where it stands financially, because in looking at these numbers, although like what Chief just put out there, most of that is general maintenance, right? Coils, spark plugs, tire sensors, that sort of thing. Where we got into bigger expenses is where there was an engine replaced in a vehicle years ago because it wasn't maintained correctly, right? So he's taking those into consideration. Hopefully we won't have those expenses, but $2,000 to $5,000 on a vehicle is not that expensive when you're thinking of the entire scope of the work. But ideally, when you look at the list here that Wes pointed out, when we have most of our vehicles 160 to 103,000 miles on them, and then the other ones coming up on the backside, they're going to be caught up to us pretty quickly, right? So I'd like to see what those numbers come in and then see how it might impact us, because if we are expensing a $30,000 a year payment for the next 4 years versus a $75,000 to $80,000 just for one vehicle, Chief will be able to get what he needs, and then we can get on a rotation then to get some of these vehicles replaced on a more scheduled approach.
Just to comment on that, just looking at what the Alderman said there, the leasing part, just looking at rough numbers, is about $12,000 a year per vehicle. But the other thing we need to factor in is that's just to pay for the vehicle. The upfitting of those vehicles are anywhere between with a squad car, the upfitting is about $14,000. The K-9 upfitting is close to $18,000. The reason being is for the dog cage, and also it's going to actually have, his vehicle is going to be set up where it has a dual purpose. It'll be able to have his dog, and it'll also be able to transport somebody due to the fact that we have a non-biting dog. They do make that cage there, which will allow Sergeant Meisner to be able to do transports if he has an arrest, as opposed to tying up a second officer. So that cost for the leasing per vehicle is roughly around $12,000 per vehicle, but we're still initially going to have to spend that $14,000 to $18,000 to upfit the vehicle. Now, the admin vehicle to upfit that one, it's not going to be as much because it's not going to have the cage put in the back. It's just more along the lines, going to have general lights. It's going to have a docking station for a computer. So the cost is nearly not as high as everything else.
And there are options, and so they can put all the upfitting into it, so they can run a separate contract because it is a state bid. We could use the vendor that is a lower price, right? that we currently use and then add that into it, or we could choose to procure the equipment and have it installed and then just finance the vehicles. But this is just something that I want to try to figure out financially, how would it play out to us? The other thing too is, if we have our money in our investments currently pulling 4% average, and we know that that's a variable amount, keeping that money in the bank and expensing little chunks of it out, we're getting interest on it even though we're paying out interest. So the mathematical compounding of that money, it is better for us to leave it in the account, right, Wes, and expense it in smaller chunks versus taking that 100,000 out and throwing it out the window, basically.
Yeah, I think
Can I
as it
stop you for a
relates
minute, Wes? Jeff, if you don't need your superintendents, they're either here on overtime or comp time, would you release them, please?
Well, we've
got
got
more?
some more, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the arbitrage of paying interest or receiving interest on our money. I do think, though, if we're ultimately looking at a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, plus a new K-9, if there's 9 or 10 units, we need to get on a replacement schedule that is, we're doing at least one every year. And then there is gonna be years where there's 2. That gives us a 5 to 6 year life cycle on these things, and I think if we can get to a point where we're planning to spend $100,000 a year if we're not financing, or purchasing these in a little bit larger blocks, 2 or 3 units that we're leasing and spending, $50,000, $60,000 a year on lease payments. But one off here and there randomly gets us out of sync, and now we've got 3 units that are 10 years old, which we don't want to do.
And just to know the vehicles too, even though they're done with police life, they still have the ability to be used for other purposes throughout the city, or there also is the ability to sell those vehicles back. There are places that buy police vehicles.
Chief, would you just give the example of the building official? You just did that.
Yeah, so when we talked about the SWAT, one of the old Tahoes, it was replaced, and we just actually, that has been reassigned to the code. It's actually split between code and building right now, so that vehicle is back up and running for them. It actually was sitting for over a year, and it's up and running and it's doing the job that they needed to do.
So we put a few thousand into it. We don't pay mileage or anything. It sits over in the lot. They use it AM and PM. They work out their own shift, and that's how we're utilizing one vehicle for 2 employees.
So right now, the only one that's in the budget is the K-9 pickup, correct?
Correct.
All right. Is the K-9 vehicle currently still functional?
It's still functional, but again, I think at a certain point, if that vehicle goes down, the dog goes down too, because we don't have a secondary vehicle for that dog to go into. And the fleet is aging, so it's more trying to stay ahead of things before we get behind, and then we don't have the resources to use.
I get that, but I guess my point would be, wouldn't that be pretty much in any agency, though, if their K-9 vehicle went down?
No, most agencies have a backup vehicle. They do.
For
They have
K-9?
for K-9s, yes. Actually, we have potentially talked to DeKalb City about potentially being able to. We have to enter into an agreement with them to potentially use their K-9. They have a spare K-9 vehicle should one of their K-9 vehicles go down.
The chief has suggested that, so we're looking at that option as well. To his defense, he did bring that up to me already, and we are going to pursue that.
And a lot of people, and a lot of places that have that backup K-9 vehicle, it's one of their retired K-9 vehicles, because the typical use of that vehicle isn't a long-term thing. It's a day or two while their current vehicle is in the shop getting whatever it needs to get fixed.
So regardless of where we go, we're still going to pursue this, because we could have anything happen even on a new vehicle. We all bought something went bad all of a sudden, so that'll be our.
Right, and just to
Backup option.
go to the point about the lease purchase, is that even at the high, if you financed everything, you're looking at maybe $50,000 a year right now to get 3 vehicles versus $55,000 to $75,000 in per vehicle on initial purchase. So there's opportunity for us to get out of the hole at a lower rate and still keep our numbers going and marching out, per Wes's suggestion about doing a vehicle replacement policy program. So,
Right, that would be 50,000 plus another 45 or 50 to outfit them, right?
no, so if you take 36,000 for the vehicle at the rate, these are simple numbers, we wanna wait till we get them all in. but
Vehicle is
just-
about 4.
Okay, so take 44 and then take the $12,000, right, or sorry, the
14.
46,000 then to upgrade all the vehicles, divide that by the 5 years, then add that to that. I didn't do that. I put the other number in there, I'm sorry, chief. So we're still getting some numbers, so I'm just saying that it will be less than the $75,000 for one vehicle. And it'll afford us the
Just
option to potentially.
restrict the vehicle, and then we will look for the
And
solutions, but we've got to.
that is something that can be done.
Right, so as we look at our options, we figure out which one's better. We're probably not gonna solve this like in a week, but we need to get the budget done. So if you at least restrict the number, they can't spend it, we get alternatives, we find something better, we can move toward that alternative.
I do just want to say out loud, I don't think it's a good idea, long-term, to have 3 squads in any given year. You only have 10. So it's a significant portion of your fleet, which is a significant cost in 1 year. So if we can try to do 1, with some years being 2, but 3 is a large expense in any one
The
given
other,
year.
and the other thing is that then those 3 come due again, cyclical in the similar time frame. So unless we rotate them and keep track of the mileage and try to keep them evenly distributed and that sort of thing, so.
Well, 2 of them are always gonna be the high mileage vehicles. 2 that are up there right now, currently. Because 2 of them are always gonna be the take-home cars, correct?
Yes, and that's roughly 60 miles a day.
And the K-9, because they take the K-9.
Both of us live up north, so it's 60, it's roughly
I agree with you,
60
right,
miles
there's
a
always
day.
gonna be one that's the top 2 cars anyway, regardless of, it's just probability.
So
This
is-
shouldn't be a
is the
shock to anybody,
K-9
because you all
number
got a
one?
report on the status
Yes.
of our motor pool, and that it needed to have corrections made to it, so. That included personnel, to vehicles, to schedule, to everything. So for now, recommendation is just put an R next to it for restriction, and then we will come back to it.
Yeah, we'll get more numbers, chief will get more numbers and we can make a determination. If it ends up being 1, it ends up being 1. And we might choose to finance that one as well versus depleting the 75,000 and pay a lower amount. So that's still on the table for even that vehicle.
Lost track here, apologize. Okay, the other big thing that I don't know if I have a slide for is for the generator. That's something that we know needs to be done up at the police department. That is in the budget for $110,000. We've had significant issues with the one that
Do we just
we're
set
trying to
the-
use.
Set the table for you, chief?
The only thing for that, just so we understand, that generator initially donated to the police department, we spent close to $14,000 in maintenance in that generator last year. It actually does have a cylinder that needs to be replaced anywhere to a tune of $20,000 to $25,000 on that generator. I just want to remind everybody, though, that generator is citywide because it does, the servers for some of the
Yeah, so-
buildings here
So
are
2 points,
maintained.
I made the chief put a Band-Aid on it last year, I told him we had to make a minor repair, and we couldn't buy a new one because it needs a bid process. And the chief's correct, when you think of body cams and all that stuff, that is our data hub. That's why the generator there is the most important piece. And we don't even know if the current one is salvageable someplace else, but we do know that we need to move quickly on this because of failure rate.
So that is in there. So, anything else you wanted to add, Chief?
That help, chief, just to like put it all out there, and
Want to talk about the computers for us, or?
Oh,
so that's
I think
110.
I've got that somewhere else in there, but that's all right. Just go
That's a
ahead and touch on it now.
$110,000 generator that we will have to go out to bid for, and we've already started the
Roughly.
process. Jeff's already got some information about going out to bid on that, if that's the council's budgeting desire.
The other thing, just talking to Mr. Penman too, is in addition to the other departments within the city needing computer replacements, we've identified at least 12 desktop computers that are going to need to be replaced too, due to the situation with Windows and them being, so, I mean, we have one computer that I think is running on Windows 7 right now.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you when we got to that, but thank you.
And actually, AID recently has come in and they've been able to update 3 computers to Windows 11. However, there's still, those were ones that he was able to figure out needed, that they were capable of doing that, but there still is a need for potentially up to 12 of them still to be to be updated.
Is there a reason you have that many desktops when everyone has a computer in their squad car?
The desktop computers there's one for each patrol thing, because there's certain things on their laptops that doesn't necessarily translate to be able to do on their desktop purpose, especially the way the files are set up, and especially considering when you're talking about the servers and the firewalls, there's certain things that, obviously, since we're dispatched by county, that we have to go through different means to get their stuff, and then there's our internal stuff that we have that has its own separate ways to go. So there is, and we actually are looking to cut down on some of the computers that we have there. That's why we've identified there's at least 12 that we need to do.
Because we could just get one station with 3 different users that log on differently. That would be an alternative.
Well, and that's my thought, is not everyone's working at the same time. So I'm trying to figure out, with 2 records, the chief, even if you said the investigator, there's 4 computers. And then if you had a handful of
Maybe
computers
sergeants
for
and the
patrol.
patrolman share.
The patrolman and the sergeants, currently 2 sergeants share 1 computer, and then the patrolman, there's 2 patrolmen assigned to computers to each computer, because there's, the way that it's set up, there's the cubicles for each patrol officers, and they share a work area.
I mean, there's never gonna be more than 4 or 5 at a time, right?
Correct.
So I guess that's my question, is do we really need that many?
We have looked at some of the, like, for example, I'll give you a perfect example. Up in the front in the area, there's 2 computers that are up there. There's no need for 2 computers up there.
Well, yeah,
There's
no way sits up there.
Well, the reasons the computers were set up there is, one is set up for the security of the building. The second computer was set up for when we were giving money back to people when they come in, when we didn't have change. We've since changed that. There's a lot of change there. So there's 2 computers right there that we've taken away from there, from that point, because they're just, and then we have the one I talked about where the Windows 7, that one's potentially going to be eliminated too. And then there's where our video system is, we're looking to downsize some of our computers too. So that process has already taken place. We're just identifying ones that are crucial for the officers to be able to have available to them.
So is there a computer number in the budget?
Yes.
Angie says yes too. All right. So let's just leave the number, and then if we can figure out some solutions with AID to have less workstations, or, an alternative, maybe the workstation now becomes a laptop or something cheaper, then we can use that for savings.
The only thing with the laptops, again, carrying them in and out of squad cars.
I'm not talking about bringing the squad car one. I'm just saying there might be some people work better off of laptops than they do workstations. I'm just saying they could dock it, they could come in, they could share a docking station. There might be some alternatives. I'll leave it up to Jeff and Karsta and the technology committee. Maybe they can give some recommendations. They should be meeting next month.
And then the only other thing I think that you haven't talked about is, again, the Sally Port. I mean, last year we allocated money for the Sally Port. We really didn't even look at it this year, but that's still something that somewhere along the line will need to be addressed. Different thought processes on it too, is necessarily, do we really need a full Sally Port, or are we able to run a tunnel from that back door to where that parking spot is and be able to take a prisoner out of a squad car right into that tunnel?
And so the number that's in the budget currently is just for architectural services to come up with a plan so that then we can budget long-term down the road of which way we would go.
Right. Yep. Questions for Chief?
Yes, sir.
I've got a few. One of mine is on the employee insurance benefits. It went down considerably. I know there must be a reason for that.
Yeah, we have a lot of new single officers. Therefore, it's a single rate.
So it went down 50,000 because of that. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Second one is on the utilities, and I hope we're getting some kind of break from somebody. Electric went from 15,000 to 1,000.
Angie?
I think,
Angie needs a microphone, don't you? Everybody know Angie? I don't have to introduce her, right? Okay.
What was currently budgeted, there's really nothing coming out of that account right now. I'm not sure what the intent was last year for that to be budgeted so high. Current use doesn't explain for it to be that high, so that's why it's only at 1,000.
Could have been because there's a new station and we weren't sure, so we just put a number there for use.
If I'm not mistaken, I think originally we were not 100% sure that that was going to fund underneath of, with our franchise agreement with ComEd. And so it was put into the budget so that we would make sure that it was earmarked if it didn't. And then once the budget was approved, then it did fall within that. So basically, the electricity is free for the police department as it stands.
And then the final one I had was the miscellaneous expense went from 3,000 to 6,000. I just wondered what was covered in there.
So we had talked about that, and one of the things, what we've been doing is we're doing a lot more community events, so it's the funding to need to do, to utilize those community events.
I have one question. The credit card processing charge is at $3,000.
The police department has a credit card system they have there. In the past several years, I notified that those charges were coming out of sewer and water. So they should have been charged to the police
Is that
department. where the-
customers paying us? Because like,
Yes.
if they pay water bill by credit card, now we charge them a fee.
So there's a fee from the processor to use the service, so that's what that is.
It's a
It's
user
monthly
fee, that's,
Yeah,
they all charge us typical.
and that's why it's new to that fund.
So think about if you're gonna go buy something somewhere, Adam, you know, you're paying a percentage, but on the back end, there's also a processing cost. Yeah, Square is an example, right? So you get that charge to you. So it's just more because we do more of the adjudication there and there's more transactions.
As Angie said, it was actually in the wrong budget line, so she put it in the correct one. So it was actually police department, didn't belong to the sewer and water. And yes, to answer your question, it is adjudication fines that are coming into the police department to be paid for.
Okay, other questions for Chief? All right, back on the street, Chief.
All right, we're going to jump into wastewater and then water so we can get these guys out of here. Wastewater Department, Brad's going to come up and join us. The wastewater treatment plant project is coming to an end. That was a state mandated project to reduce phosphorus levels and discharge at the plant. It's
Page 31.
It's substantially complete. We're hoping final items will be done by May. We've run into a couple things that we're still trying to straighten out, but we're moving along on that. The low-interest
Sorry, I have a
EP.
different list. What page is it in their budget, Jeff?
The sewer department starts on page 51, but the reserve fund is 50,
It's after that,
it's after that,
like
yes.
53 or 55.
Yep.
I was going by
The
the slide
reserves are
list of it.
59, so. Okay, let's see, timeframe, we're hoping to be done, wrapped up by May. The low-interest loan is set at about 14 million, paid out 11,691,000 on construction, the remainder's on engineering. We're looking at carrying over about $100,000 into the next fiscal year, just things that may not get billed at the final end of that project. Repayment begins 6 months after the final completion, and the estimated payment's about $820,000 annually for the next 20 years. Phosphorus levels will need to be reviewed again in 28 and 29 because there is a different level on, to achieve at 2030. We believe we're gonna be okay, but I think it's important to point out that we need to reevaluate it at that point in time and see if there's any additional improvements that need to be made to the wastewater treatment plant.
So maybe I can help with some concerns I've seen out there about a $17 million loan. This is 14 million of this. This was required by the Illinois EPA because we could be in non-compliance with phosphate discharge. So they basically told us that we had to come up with a remediation plan, and this is the plan. And if we don't bring our phosphates under control from here forward, then we could be fined by the Illinois EPA. So this is a compliance piece. The other part of that that's out there is about our well, and Brian can talk about our well when he gets up here, but essentially, radium is a radioactive element. It is naturally in the ground, and therefore it naturally comes into our water. Our water building is collapsing. It's over 100 years old, and our well is as well. So when Brian gets here, he can talk about why we need to do that, but it all comes down to a safer work environment for our employees, a better well process with our HMO, and better quality of water. That's the bottom line, and it comes at a cost, and it all comes with compliance.
The other, next big thing this year will be the Main Street sewer improvements. Our estimated cost there is $533,690. Of that, $480 is construction costs, and then a portion of the construction engineering is included in that. We are hoping that number's a little less because it did come in, when the bids came in through IDOT, it was about 800,000 less overall, but I've been unable to get from IDOT how that breaks out. So at this point, that may be a little high, but we'd rather be, we've been conservative with some of the estimates with this, but again, until we really know, it's difficult to do that.
City Hall's requested information 3 weeks ago. We get that when IDOT gives that to us. We'd like to tell you where some of those cost savings might be. So to Jeff's credit, that request has been there. We just have not received the data to help us out, so we must go off of what we believe it to be, and that may be adjusted from a lower bid later.
Did you want to talk about that? No. Okay. Major initiatives that we've had this past year, we did manhole rehabilitation and lining. We did $80,000 worth in 2024, and it seems to have made a significant improvement. This is something we want to do on an annual basis. Right now, there is $80,000 in there, again, to continue to stabilize those. Those are brick manholes in most cases, and this is to coat them and stabilize them. So
Keeps infiltration. Brad, how old do you think most of our manholes are?
Oh, they're really old.
Did you turn the mic toward you? Make sure it's green.
The ones we're focusing on right now are from the 30s. They're all brick manholes laid by hand, so they're crumbling. This gives structural integrity back, keeps out infiltration. It's a major improvement on our collection system. It's something that people don't see, but it is a major improvement. And, you know, if we keep up with $80,000, we're gonna be able to significantly make large improvements. And we'll have the old part of towns all identified within probably, if we keep up at this rate, I would say 6 years max. We're in Ward 1 right now, and then we're gonna kind of move over to Ward 2, 3, and then 4 is how it's going, because we had our flow monitoring study and we identified a certain area, and they rated all our manholes in that area, severe, moderate, fair. So we're just working off of that right now is how we started, where we started.
So this ties back in the need for the GIS system and recording and map layering, and then also overwhelms the system and heavy rain content that then Brad has to manage. This will hopefully keep that system from being overcharged. Is that a good term in some cases?
And then this also goes along with Nick's purchase of the GIS stick, because now we're finding manholes that we didn't know that weren't on our maps, and now instead of giving the information to our engineering company, them charging us to put it on there, we now will have the ability to find its exact location, give the rim elevations, say what size line it is in there. It gives us a lot more ability to do things in-house this way.
And Brad, this is also the first step, right? So you're doing the manhole lining, and then you're doing the jet rotting, and then you're doing eventually sewer laterals and so forth, lining down the road, or mains, I guess I should say as well, right?
Yeah, that's correct. I kind of made the decision to do, our manholes are, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, they're in bad shape. They're from the 30s. They get vibrations from the road, traffic over top of them. It's a very moist environment, and they're crumbling, but they're in a good enough shape where this lining takes care of a lot of their issues. So my focus is on getting them all lined, getting that taken care of, and then we're gonna come back around and then put all of our money into lining all the mains. We do lining of the mains now, but right now we're doing smaller sections that we see. You know, you might see a dip in the road, and then, so that we call it a bird bath. And then we'll have a company come in and put a 10-foot liner in there to give that pipe structural integrity again and keep it from crumbling. But yes, that's the grand plan.
But this is utilizing the data that we collected several years ago and actually using that data to put a plan together, which we didn't have in the past. So this is great headway moving forward, so thank you.
Yes, it's working out very well right now. And I got confirmation that, our prices from the last 2 years will still be upheld moving forward from, the contractor that we use. So that's also a good thing, that we're not getting rates raised on us in the time where everything's going up, so.
You want to talk a little bit about dead-end manholes? I know we budgeted 50,000 this year, but there were a few things that we ended up, that were not on the list this year that we did with lift stations, so we didn't actually do any of the dead-end manholes this year, but we've got 50,000 in this year, and that's something you wanted to address annually.
So with this, with these monies, we did not have the time with the construction project at the plant that took, in our staffing levels, that took everything we had. We were not able to get to where we wanted to identify some of these issues. But as the mayor said, if we focus now on Pleasant Street, we have several manholes. The way they ran the sewer system back then, they sort of just ended the pipe at the end of the line and they never put a manhole in. So we can only access the line from one end. Everywhere else, we can get at it, an issue from either end. And there are some residents up there who've had some issues, and it would have benefited us and them to be able to put in a manhole at the other end, and we'd have access to both ends. And the problem with Pleasant Street is that on the north side, it's used heavily for fiber optics, communication lines. There's not a whole lot of room in there. But with our staff and these monies to be able to hire a contractor to be able to put in a manhole, hopefully we can do it without engineering. We might have to get creative a little bit up there because the right-of-ways are so full. But there's a lot of lines in town that sort of just go and then they stop. So we need to be able to access both ends.
Would there be an option to, instead of putting a structure that might be hard to fit in, just creating a riser in that point so you have a point of egress?
We do find a lot of that, actually. They have done that in the past.
So you'd still be able to jet and still be able to camera and everything, but you wouldn't have to have a structure put in, and it would probably be a reduced cost,
If we
but.
could put a structure in, it would be the best,
Yeah.
because then we're able to clean it with our vector. But if we just had a point of access, would be a bare minimum, but it would be an improvement, but, and we might have.
You're
to
still
do that.
excavating the area, so one caveat is you're still excavating the area, you're still putting shoring and everything and to tie it in, so you might just be able to put a smaller structure in potentially.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is, I think there's gonna be, with this, there's gonna be a lot of going out there, identifying what the problem is, and then quickly coming up with a solution. It's not saying, hey, we're just running a line down here, we're gonna put a manhole every 300 feet. We gotta see what we have, the room we have, and then come up with a solution from there.
Thanks.
But this, with the project nearing its completion, this is hopefully gonna be a priority for us, that we'll be able to get a lot more time designated to this.
Okay. Next item, let's see. We had talked about a new storage garage at the wastewater treatment plant. We had $250 in this last year's budget. We had talked about trying to include that in the loan for the wastewater treatment plant. We weren't able to qualify for it to be in the loan just because we hadn't identified it at the front end of the project. The $250 wasn't enough. Estimated project cost going forward, we're guessing at $500,000. There's nothing budgeted this year. So just wanted to make sure that that was noted. Next, seal coating of parking lots at the plant. We had a significant amount of new asphalt with the project. Typically, especially with parking lots and non-street areas, you want to try and get a good coat of seal coat on it to extend the life of it within the first year. That's what the plan is with this. In a perfect world, it should be reseal coated every few years. So.
I'm going to recommend, I spoke with Jeff, that our street department bid on this project too. We do have some expertise in that department that maybe you can take a look at or be involved in this.
Okay.
And if not, then that's fine, but this is the number we expect market cost.
All right, drying bed improvements. You want to talk about that, Brad?
So this past winter, we are, as we've talked about, in dire need of storage and, a maintenance garage to be able to work on things as we have, new equipment, more equipment. So this winter, we started doing some drying bed improvements to do what we can with the space we have available. So this is just to expand on this. We poured some concrete over the drying beds that weren't really used. They were used more for storage. We're just repurposing an area really. And this dollar amount actually would probably go towards a heater for, in the building. And or some other minor improvements. Cause we know that $500,000 is a lot to build a maintenance shop. So this is kind of just a little bit to give us something to work with.
It's a prudent approach to solving our problems and repurposing that building that's kind of sat empty. We store some of our off-season equipment in there, so it's a good move.
Okay, DSL pump replacement, you want to talk about that, Brad? First, what does DSL stand for?
That's what I was gonna ask, so.
These are the digested sludge line pumps. It takes the sludge out of our out of our digesters and pumps it to our belt press. These pumps, they're not original to the plant, but they're original to the original project in 2002. We use them twice a week, probably 8 hours. They're showing some life, some wear. We got some cracks going on how they were made. The seam's starting to split apart. We got some leaks out of the seals. So they're nearing its life expectancy. We're looking at needing to replace these. Without these pumps, we're not able to run our press.
How many of them are there?
2.
Just 2. How many pumps would you say are throughout the plant?
Oh, I don't know, there's a lot.
30? 30?
Yeah, ish.
30-ish. And that's the point, is that I didn't realize there was only 2 of this type, but we need to be on a replacement plan for these types of pumps, for all these types of pumps, so that we're regularly replacing them instead of waiting for them just to, you know, if we can swap them out or be able to get them refurbished or whatever to extend the life, but we gotta be, rather than just, well, we gotta do 2 of them or whatever for 25,000. So the goal would be to get something that's more manageable.
And that was my question is, can they be refurbished potentially to where we replace them and then have some sitting on a shelf so that we can, you know, you spend $10,000 to refurb those, but then you're saving the 15,000, you know, later on down the road.
We have talked about it. One is able to definitely be rehabbed. The other one, due to this crack on it, I don't think that's gonna be salvageable.
Okay.
The other problem is, and it might be able to, but these pumps are so old, they get you that by the time they find this part and then they rebuild it, they could have had a new one put in. So that's kind of what we run into a lot with these kind of pumps.
And that's really the point, is that we've got a number of them out there. We need to make sure that we get them on a replacement schedule so we can have a set amount every year to reinvest into the plant, rather than having to wait till we do the project or we do something big to be able to make sure that those are working properly. Let's see, the other pumps you were talking about was the RAS pump rebuild?
Yeah, the RAS pumps, they run 24 hours a day. Those never stop. That's kind of another lifeline of our plant. We do have 4 of them that we can alternate between, depending on our flow levels. If we have more flow, we need a bigger pump going. But as they run 24 hours a day, their seals wear out and normal wear and tear, the impellers and volutes on them. You know, that's a lot of abuse on a pump like that. So we're at a time where we need to start rebuilding them one by one.
And 15,000 is for one?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, just want to be clear on that. And then we also had to replace a check valve on the Sunset lift station. I know we have 6 lift stations, but how often are we needing to do this? And this one needs to be done because?
This one needs to be done because, and we might be able to get a rebuild. Company's supposed to be coming out next week to take a look at them. But again, they're old, they're leaking. So the lift station is down below, it pumps up and pumps down to a spot where we can flow gravity to the sewer plant. So just like any check valve, once it pumps up, you don't want it all coming back down, you're just gonna start recirculating. So those check valves need to be able to close properly, so the pumps can run more efficiently.
Brad, is that original? So if that's Webb or Thomas subdivision, that's 25, 30 years old?
I thought they might have been replaced one time before, I
Oh.
believe.
Maybe that's a good thing to put in a replacement plan, of what we think they'd last versus what they maybe have, so.
Right. And, you know, one thing that I might recommend is that some of these things that are recurring is to put them into the operating fund versus the reserve fund, just because it's something we need on an annual basis to reinvest into our plant. And then that way it's budgeted, it's something we're doing, and it's not, it doesn't become a one-off that we're doing it. It's just, this is something we know we have to take care of, we're gonna go ahead and do it. It's like doing oil on your car. We gotta do it, it's gonna have to happen. So, anything else for Brad? Oh, the plant water system. You had mentioned that, but I don't believe we've got that in here. But the plant water system, I just made a note on because we had talked about doing it. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, with the plant water system, I think we found a new way that we want to go with that. The filters that we were replacing, self-backwash, and they're bad shape, leaking everywhere, spraying water. They were $25,000 a piece to replace, but now we have tertiary filters in our plant with the new project, so it takes out the suspended solids even more, so our water's cleaner. So I personally don't feel the need for those $25,000 filters. We're actually in the middle of a trial and error system on something to try it to see if it's working. Working good so far, so, but like Jeff said, with the pumps and the motors, to rebuild one of them little tiny pumps for this system was like $6,000. So it's something that we do need to start identifying in our operating budget. I don't believe it should be a part of a capital project, but things are very expensive, like in the water department, things are very expensive down there. So we do need to keep monies available for replacement.
Right. You also had mentioned the roof on the GBT building. Can you tell us what GBT is?
That's the gravity belt thickener. That's the press that the DSL pumps feed. The building has 2 HVAC units up on top. It's starting to leak when it rains. $40,000 would be probably for a full replacement. I'm hoping it's early enough we can get somebody up there to take a look at it and repair it. It's a flat roof, so it's just needing to get some TLC to it.
What type of roof is that? Is that,
I think it's a membrane.
okay. So maybe that goes back to Adam's point of maybe patching and covering, so.
And that is not currently in this budget. It was one we talked about, but we pulled out. And then vehicles, I always say they have 2.33 vehicles because they kind of share the Vector truck with water and streets. But there's a new F-250, and then they've got a Ford Ranger on loan from the street department that'll probably require replacement in the future. So
Where'd your old truck go to? Did we repurpose that?
it went to the water
We
department.
went to the water department.
There's another example of us just reusing our fleet, so.
And this Ford Ranger currently is currently costing us a lot in time to maintain this with its problems. So we will have to look at doing something with that.
Yeah, the key word there
A lot
was
of
in the
time spent
budget
and
was on loan.
breakdowns out in the
Yeah.
district.
I think the street department was fine loaning it, let's put it that way. Am I wrong? All right, if there's no further questions for Brad, we can move on to water.
I have a question. For the cable internet, why are we going up $3,500 from 2,000 to 5,500?
Well, that was the one place in our system that did not have fiber. And with all the new improvements at the wastewater treatment plant, we needed a more secure line. And that was the best way to do it. If we were gonna try and go with fiber through CityOf like we have at the other places, it was gonna be, what was it, $30,000 out of pocket to install it there. So it was less expensive to be able to take it on a monthly basis than it was to do the capital improvement to do that and spend a similar amount of money with CityOf.
The Frontier line, Rich, that we had major issues to it. It's an old copper line that, every junction splice box they had, every time there was wind or rain, they had to come out and splice it. It was not reliable. We missed some alarm calls, and that was the biggest issue on the decision, the reliability. That we can't just happen to find the alarm. We need to be notified of it. We actually had an issue where the line was out there and it just, the way it was doing it, it called 911 and it wouldn't stop calling. And we couldn't figure out why. And it was just because of the line's corroded and the contact that it makes. So reliability was the biggest decision with this.
Is that something we should have probably have planned for when we did the upgrades to the plant? I mean, for the fiber and.
Yeah,
We
ideally,
should have had
wanna-
that before, yeah.
We did talk about this, yeah, and a lot, like Comcast, like Jeff said, wanted to charge us 15,000. MetroNet waived the, construction fees as long as we got into, like a 1G plan for 4 years.
Okay.
So ideally, fiber, Rich, would be what we wanted, but it had the most cost because where it has to come to get to the farthest part of the city. It probably will come up as just a better option at some point in time. It's just not feasible to put that line through and then pay on top of that to maintain the line, but that would be the ultimate goal. So this is a interim solution that takes us out of some failures.
And a lot less chance of not receiving an alarm then, as far as missing them.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and with this, now we have the ability to put in another system and then it'll monitor backup and then it can call cellular-wise too now as a backup instead of going over this dial-up line that we had.
Okay.
And even Frontier laughed that we still had it. They didn't even know.
Was it a DSL line? I think it was a DSL line still.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it
they
was
call it
old
copper.
technology. So, and I know you've made some upgrades at the, a number of the lift stations where now we're using, instead of actual phone lines, it's more radio, is it not? Or am I?
Yeah, that's all with a Verizon cell service as well.
Okay.
And at a lot of those lift stations that we upgraded, they had to charge us long distance calls because it would call my cell phone and they considered that a long distance call. Other than that, we had to have it call the plant. Well, it goes to no one.
That's what happens when you live in Salmonag. That's long.
Yeah.
distance.
So it's now 500 annually for each lift station, where it was 130, I think, for the 2 lift stations that we had.
Okay.
That was a month, that were long distance.
And these are kind of housekeeping things that we're trying to attack as we find them, that when they make sense, let's find the most efficient way to do it, but we gotta make sure that things are communicating properly and things are working like they're supposed to.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand as far as what
Absolutely,
the
it was a
big
big
increase was.
It was a
so.
big increase, and we didn't want to make that much of an increase, but when we looked at the other options, that was the most reasonable way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you bet.
And with that copper system, that was our own system, right? There was a line of demarcation between Frontier and us, and that was our system to maintain?
No, that was actually Frontier.
Or was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I remember we've had issues for years with
Oh,
that.
yeah,
and-
yeah. And through the project, we have fixed a lot of our own issues.
Mm-hmm.
But it was Frontiers, and we were gonna upgrade through Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept telling us that they were getting a fiber package in, and that Frontier decided to keep sending it to other communities. And they kept kicking the bucket down the road on Sandwich, so
Mm-hmm.
we had to leave them to make this decision.
Sounds good.
The only thing I have is, on the insurance benefits, again, yours went up 32,000 a year, the police went down, so I can only assume that means you guys are getting older.
New employee.
That's a good part of it, and then also the cost of we have a
New employee.
50/50 person that's between water and sewer that we added this past year, so there's some additional cost there.
But I think we must have been off before, because there were some major swings too,
Yep.
so.
And that's the hard part, is that, you know, like with the health insurance, if somebody goes from an HMO plan to a PPO plan, that does change it. It gets more expensive, or if they have more kids and, you know, or a bigger family or what have you, those are costs that we can't regulate.
So remember, every time you add another full-time employee, that's 7.2% average FICA Medicare, that's 4.5% IMRF, That is the employee cost of the city's portion of single or family. So that's why some of those costs have changed from time to time. Some of it's typical, like Jeff mentions, there's a huge jump from single to the family portion the city pays. That's an employee benefit, and that's, some of it's just some corrective areas too.
As our officers get older, I expect that's gonna cost a little more money. But, all right, if we're done with Brad, we could bring Brian in. Thanks for being here, Brad.
Actually, can we just take a 10-minute break? And
You're the chair, Fred.
I'd like to take a 10-minute break, and then there's donuts, coffee, and stretch your legs, and then we'll come back.
10-minute recess. Should've just had them all up front and dismissed them. It's all right. So, we gotta get through it, so.
We're still live on YouTube. I can't pause it. I'll need to turn it back on.
You know where to find me.
This thing is a major moving violation.
Want me to bring you a sprinkle one? You seem a little offended. I signed the kids up for an Easter egg.
Good.
Oh, I have a suggestion then.
Yeah,
You know, there's
I don't like all that sugar.
two neighbors breaking up the times.
Or my body doesn't like all that sugar.
If you broke up the territories,
Already done. Well,
try that.
not a bad idea.
Because then the parents are
Yeah,
kind of like,
I get
so they see that you're kind of.
But also it's for, traffic flow too.
Gotcha.
Cause it's, everybody shows up once where they park.
Well,
They can't park on the lawn.
drive?
We're easy, cause we're actually gonna mark off the, probably Wednesday, Thursday, we're gonna mark off the 3 territories. So we're set to go there. And then it's supposed to be, so far the forecast is like Saturday's supposed to be, it'll probably be like in the 50s, when we're out there, so that's good.
Cool, good.
Yeah, so part of that, it's not, it's just more along the lines of, right now it's for parking purposes. Yeah, cause they'll all be set up, and some people also say you should still do that once, but what happens is the 9-10-year-olds walk out with 75 eggs,
Oh, yeah.
and the 2-year-olds walk
Oh,
out
yeah,
with 1.
that happens at my house too, because my adult children decided to go hunt the eggs and I leave them alone.
And do you hide Easter baskets too?
Yeah.
See, that is not supposed to happen.
I do.
I don't know who came up with that concept to hide Easter baskets.
I have big clues about it.
I never had that until I met my wife.
Do you wanna know what happened one year?
Why do they have Easter baskets?
Yeah, it's cool. It's not bad.
What's the history behind hiding Easter baskets?
Just to mess with the kids, I guess, I don't know.
I get the eggs,
My parents did it forever.
but well, how did that start? I wanna know how that started. Here's your history.
I'll do that. I'll look that up. Yeah, we'll be there. We'll bring both kids, so.
Part of that community. Part of that community part. I'm sort of bagel.
Make a good photo op.
Maybe.
And he asked me for my plate number.
What's that?
You didn't buy your cup of coffee in town.
I didn't. I'm, well, it's either Casey's Coffee or Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you. I'm getting one. Thank you, sir. You know what?
I don't have bagel.
Chief, you want something
Local. AG appreciates it.
Okay.
Fred, can you please report to the council chambers?
Okay, you ready? It's been 11 minutes, is that what it's been?
Yeah, just end the recess and call it back to order.
Okay, we'll go back into our meeting here. So I think we're gonna be talking about the water funds now.
That we are. We have Brian here. Water Reserve, capital budget. Big project for us was Latham Street. I believe that 900,000 was what we've estimated. We paid out,
Latham or Maine?
this is Latham, okay? Estimated cost overall is 900,000. We've paid about 41.1 to date. So we've got 418,900 that we're gonna have to take from water and transfer to MFT because we've had expenses that were expensed from MFT that they need to cover, but that's the remaining portion for water. Okay, and again, once we have final numbers, we'll be able to work that out more clearly.
That's why it's important we try to get North Latham Street closed as soon as possible.
Yep.
That'll let Jeff and Angie know our real numbers.
Yep. This year, we're due for a risk and resilience plan. This is every 5 years. It's required to the EPA. The cost of it, when we did it before, I believe was $47,000. This is more of a renewal, so it's 30. But this is a mandated thing. Is that correct, right, Brian?
Yeah, it is. We actually have a roundtable with DeKalb County EMA, local EMA, area departments, Illwarn, which is like a municipal system. But after they go through, they basically give you a worst-case scenario. Since Sandwich sits on the Sandwich Fault, we had to prepare for earthquakes, tornadoes, everything, and then they give you the worst-case plan. When we had a tabletop, they threw everything at us, a tornado and a hurricane at the same, or hurricane, tornado, and earthquake at the same time. And we had to see how we could bounce back and how the city resources could continue giving water and stuff to the people. And we were able to do that with a plan.
Main Street water main replacements, like we talked about, we've estimated at about 1.525 million. 1.3 of that is the construction cost, 144,550 is the estimated construction engineering. And then we've got $50,000 in there for a replacement of, I believe it's 7 or 6 lead service lines. So there's a dollar amount in there to make sure that we can get those done. And as you can tell, yeah.
Regarding lead service lines, is that on the homeowner side of the B-box?
This one on Main Street project will be, and kind of when I had talked with you, I actually talked with Brandt Construction. I think Rich is probably the only person that was around for the Hall Street project, but they put in from the Hall Street all the way down to the sewer plant, and they've guaranteed us an amount of $7,100 on short and $75 on the long side. They want to do 2 a day when they come in, just to cut down costs, but for this Main Street project, the only house on that 200 block that we won't have to touch is 202 North Main. They actually have from the B-box into the house plastic. It was put in years ago before the IEPA said no partial line replacements. So there's only 6 houses out of the, I think there's 42 services that we got to do that we, right now, we're looking at it, us just replacing the whole amount. It'd be.
The only other question I have on that, because currently per our own ordinance, we aren't allowed to pay for the homeowner side of the B-box. It shows us having to recapture that back. So are we showing that anywhere as far as getting the cost back from the homeowner?
That'd be if the council decides that they want to re-amend or do anything differently. I mean, right now, part of that EPA project, even though it states that way, when you touch a service line right now, there's no partial line replacement, so we have to replace it all the way to from the B-box and the B-box into the house. Now, whether the city tries to do a recapture afterwards, that's gonna be up to you guys, but per EPA mandate, we have to do a complete line. Unfortunately, there's no way around for us to, like, hey, we'll do our portion and then homeowner can do theirs. EPA doesn't allow it anymore.
Yeah, Brian, that's in any case, right?
Yeah,
If
right.
you just happen to be coming by, there's a water leak or whatever, that happens, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It used to be we could do kind of 50-50 kind of with thing, if it was our portion and we could fix our part. But unfortunately, with the new rules, I think it was 2023 that when they came out, or maybe 2022, just after COVID, they said there's gonna be no more partial line replacements.
So just to clarify what Adam's point is, right, is whether or not the city wants the resident to pay for a portion of that, right? That's where you're
Well,
getting
per
at, because
ordinance, we
it
just
currently says
can't
that
pay
they're
for it.
responsible for that, but the state is now saying that it has to be replaced within a certain time frame. So I think there's further discussion that needs to take place on this, and maybe similarly to like the sidewalk replacement where we've talked about a 50-50 program, maybe in these things that might be an option for us, I don't know. Or we take care of the work and they take care of restoration, I have no idea, so.
It'd be cheaper for the city in a sense of, and the person that bid the job in to let them do the whole job, and then I guess to fight the battle later if who you're gonna make what pay.
Right.
It's a big expense on a homeowner's cost, and if the city, I guess we could swing it, or maybe if we could get loans or grants coming out for future projects. I know there's like $1 billion sitting out there, but like places like City of Chicago, they have 700,000 services. I know some other towns that have actually been doing it. I know Montgomery, they actually got some money where they could do some, and that's how I found out with, through this construction company that they've been doing them. They did around 20-some thousand service lines already, so they've got it kind of narrowed down. We were using Corey Johnson out of Somonac, but these guys kind of have a crew dedicated just to lead service lines, and they've knocked the price down quite a bit.
And the other side of this too is I personally have a little bit of pain with now this project's gonna take off and we haven't talked to the property owners ahead of time of what our plan is. I think like, since this is a long-term project and that 50,000 is a relative small amount to the entire project, for the replacement of the rest of the lines that we have to do per the state rules and regulations, we should come up with a game plan of how to move forward with those.
All the individuals on Main Street, they have been advised and talked to just to know that there's gonna be some disruption in their house coming up. But luckily, it's not that many residents. But everything in the 200 block, there's 5 of them right there, and then there's one in the 400 block in North Main Street that's gonna have to get, but they said when they come in, they put their tools, they're within 1 or 2 inches of the original line coming in. That's how they got it narrowed down so good.
So we've had this conversation at council, and it's another council decision not to be solved in this meeting, but we do need to resolve that. To Brian's point, sometimes when we come with loans or grants, there's 2 main factors. One is our per capita that determines if we get it or not, and then I'll tell you for a fact, we have not gotten grants because our per capita is too high, which means as a collective community, we make too much money in the eyes of the federal government. So they'll typically loan those to large needs and those that they'll consider more of a poverty area. So even though we can apply, there's likely we may not get those, but we always pursue those.
And then when they're replacing these lines, are they pulling copper in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Brant's price. Some companies were using PEX, the plastic service line, which is okay through AWWA and IDPH. It's allowable. But with the bidding prices I got from Brant Construction, it's gonna be all copper.
That's the only reason I bring it up is currently in the ordinance, it states we have to have type K copper for the service lines. That's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah, from the main to the B box, but from privately, from the B box to the house, we can't mandate that, but right now it's all copper.
Unfortunately, in our ordinance, it does mandate it. So if we can't mandate it, then we need to change the ordinance.
All right, Jeff, you put that note to send that to legal?
Just, I know we're gonna solve that today, but just for reference, in my continued education classes I do for a water license, I've asked plenty of guys, and it's a mixed review. Some are the city pays for it, some are the homeowner, and some they split it. So at least that's how their plans are. A lot of them are still going through the process like we are.
Some of the cities like South Elgin, they had more money and stuff,
Yep.
so they were eating the whole cost.
And that's how it's being stated to me too. It's
Yeah.
the wealthier communities that are doing it. You know, I'm talking about the municipality itself is doing it, but yeah.
Yeah, the original plan by the EPA was a kickoff for our lead service line program in 2027, a 10-year plan, 7 to 8 lines per year. This actually puts us ahead of that time frame, so we technically get done a year ahead.
Yeah,
which
these
is good
6
for
that
us
we're
for
doing
compliance.
now will be actually knocked off the list of the,
70.
and hopefully they stick to the 2027 plan, but this was supposed to start in 2024, and they just keep bouncing it back, because they're finding out more and more issues. They're getting pushback from homeowners in places, and there is a waiver that, let's just say if I had to go to Adam's house and he refuses, we can't force him mandated to do it, but then also that house gets tagged, and if he sells it, it's buyer beware that this house has a lead service line or it had a galvanized pipe that never got replaced, then it would be up to him to advise the seller or get it fixed. We are not really getting a lot of pushback, but right now I'm doing 40 lead copper samples that were set up by the state, Illinois EPA, when we did the inventory, when we went around with the CAMVAC and did the 240 services. They picked out 40 services out of there and actually had 5 of them up on Rebecca Street. And finally, the last resident at 217 was able to get a sample to a Friday, but it's been taking 4 to 5 days per sample sometimes. But we gotta have 40 of them done before June 30th, and then after June to December, state wants them resampled again. So it's kind of costly on our part for man hours, just going back and forth and doing stuff. And then I know there's gonna be some cost to it, but we don't know even yet. I have 1 round of samples of 7 samples that are in the state lab, but we don't even know the cost of them yet, where they're gonna be. But I do have money build up for sampling, but typically it's only been, like $35, $40 per sample.
I think it's good that you pointed out that there is that option where they can opt out.
Yep.
because I think that's something the city's gonna have to think about when we do decide who's gonna be paying for this. I also think we need to keep in mind that there's something there I remember reading in the brochure from EEI a while back, and I brought this up. If we use, it's either state or federal money to do any of this, we as a city are on the hook.
Our grant, I believe, does not apply to that. That's what you're thinking, the $80,000 we would see to do the study, I don't think is applicable to that.
No, if we get any, Rich is right, if we get any additional
Additional
money,
money,
like if we have
Then we're
homeowners
hooked
pay
on it.
for it the first round and then we get money, there's nothing for them. It's
Right.
for that going forward, then everybody, then we have to do all of them.
Correct.
I shouldn't want you to think that because we've got $80,000
Right.
for our grant, this now kicks us into
Yep.
pain. That is not
Nope.
true, but going forward, if we were to secure something and it was given to us, then we'd have to either amend what we currently do or change the way we do business.
There's obligations that go with the funding. So, and I put this slide together before Brian got me new numbers, so I apologize. Some of it's not exactly right, but we estimate 70 residential lead service lines, right?
Right now, from what they're looking at, there are some still unidentified ones, but they're in areas where there's copper. So that's kind of a hard number. The number could increase just a little bit, but right now, we've actually been able, with that last grant that we got, we knocked off like 75 or 80 houses that we were able to determine that it was copper on our side. And that just numbers, if it's copper on the city side, that house is good to go. You don't ever have to do anything with it. If it was iron pipe or lead whip with galvanized, it's an instant, has to be, because they say the lead can leach into the galvanized pipe. So no matter what, even though we're lucky our water's hard, it puts a lining inside the pipe. And I'm gonna find out here shortly when these lead copper samples come in, we'll know what kind of numbers that some of these houses that have, it either had a lead whip prior or galvanized pipe. And then we'll see what actually is in there, and it'll give us some better data.
So with Brian's number, you're $70,000 for 6 lines, 50,000 is probably better. 6 lines costs us 4,100.
50 for this year for Main Street project. Yeah,
and-
because we're looking at about $42,500 to replace all the lines
Yeah,
with Brandt's pricing.
going forward, 70,000 is a more appropriate number for us probably as we do our 10-year plan. So
If we stick with Brandt, I would probably recommend that, yeah.
yeah, we can pull it down, but that's.
Yeah.
That
Well-
sets our 10-year cycle though, so. with this
Right,
year-
all along, I've been saying we should probably plan on $80,000 a year just to make sure that we have enough. It sounds like some of the pricing has come down, but who knows, with demand, it could go back up. So it's still a number we need to make sure that we have in there for a number of years, because if there's 63 more, or there could be 67, if there's a couple more that come in, it's something we're gonna have to address, and we're gonna have to begin to address that in 2027 as a mandate. And we can make a decision if we want to move ahead on some of this, even for next year, if we want to do a few. But I think it's, yeah, there's some decisions still to be made. But this is another mandate.
Is your microphone on, Bill? Bill, your microphone.
On the accrued vacation and sick, it goes from 4,000 to 41,000.
Somebody's retiring and we'll have to make a substantial payout?
That's the answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. It's all accrued benefits, including comp time, must be paid out at that time.
Okay. We've talked a lot recently about the state revolving loan funding for bigger projects. That's still on display for everybody if they'd like to see it at City Hall. But that's for the booster pump at Fairwinds, replacement of 2- and 4-inch water lines, and then Railroad Street demolition and Clark Street water treatment plant expansion. The current budget, and going through it with the the budget committee, we had left engineering costs in for the booster pump, the 2- and 4-inch lines, and the Railroad Street demolition, or decommission, excuse me. At this point, we probably need at least the 300,000 if we're gonna do one of them to begin with. The others we may be able to back off with. That's what you took from our conversation with
Yeah,
Steve.
so we had a conversation with EEI, right? So they're the experts on this process, just like our attorney. We rely on her for her legal expertise. We had a conversation yesterday about the reality of, is 545,822, and I got that number correctly, that was proposed. The answer is that, one, we're still waiting on the loan process, right? It's not a given. We're still in the queue. We went through 1 or 2 rounds already. And some of these will take place as they get approved. The engineering cost is on us, but when we do get approved, we do have to have the engineering done. So in our conversations, we believe the only project for 25-26 for engineering costs should be the Clark Street treatment expansion and our decommissioning. We're gonna put off the booster pump. We'll only do that when we have a development the development's shovel-ready. We're talking Deer Path, 800 homes, but we get to that point where that's ready to go, then we will have to expedite our engineering to put that in as it's being constructed. And then the last line is, the next part then are, you know, or those are 2 or 3, is our 2 and 4 inch water line replacement. So that's, I think, our strategic plan to move forward with that particular funding opportunity. So that'll be reduced by $2,300, which helps the budget, which is why we are here today.
So my question that I have on that booster pump, that's strictly 100,000 for engineering, or that's 100,000 total turnkey?
No, that's just for
Engineering.
Engineering, okay.
Right, and I've got a couple slides here on the wastewater decommissioning and moving everything to Clark Street. The estimated project cost is 4.2 million, and we're looking at 300,000 in engineering for this year. That would include decommissioning the Railroad Street treatment plant, which is held up with Jenga blocks currently. Relocation of operations to the Clark Street plant, and then converting well pumping to underground, I believe, right?
Well, let's have Brian talk a little bit about this.
Per
condition
our
of the
last
building.
IEPA visit, it was mandated that this be put on a priority of expanding Clark Street plant and decommissioning Railroad Street plant. So that's, and they did talk about the 2, 4, and it should say 6-inch water lines on there too, because any lines that are under 8-inch, they want them upgraded to a minimum of 8-inch water line in the future. So like even over in Bill's area, they got a 2-inch line. Luckily, they've really never had issues with, you know, unless we've had a
This Bill,
break-in.
not Bill Chuck.
Yeah, sorry, Bill Chuck. But all of them need to be replaced in the future, but Clark Street would have to be expanded. Right now, there has 2 high service pumps, so another one has to be put in there. We have what we call a detention base, where our oxidation filter, where our water sits in a 70,000 gallon tank underneath the water plant, and that water has to be held there for at least 20 minutes. We well exceed that with that amount of water. So we can actually put in another booster pump in there, and we can supply water from wells 1 and 2. And if we use well 3 in the future, that's where the radium part will come in with HMO. But we can still have the detention time with them 2 wells. It's a 12-inch transmission line that feeds water into the plant, and they said multiple wells can feed into that plant. And we have to do that first before Railroad Street can be decommissioned, because we do need that. Railroad Street pumps right around 500 to 600 gallons a minute, and we need that in the summertime. We can get away with it in the winter, but we need that extra gallons per minute during our probably July, August, September, and then shortly after the fair's over with, our numbers come down. But quite a few years ago, I went around and did leak detection, and we've dropped our numbers around 200, 300,000 a day pumping. You know, we're only pumping right around 600 to 700,000 a day. We don't hit 1 million like we used to. And our big leak we had was in Harvey Creek. We had about 200,000 a day going in that we didn't know about because it never surfaced. And when I had the leak detection company come out, they said, yeah, there's a big leak. We dug down, found it. And the next day, it was almost 200,000 less that we pumped.
Could you explain HMO, the homogeneous?
Yeah,
process?
HMO stands for homogenized magnesium oxide. It is a black liquid that we would get from Hawkins or somebody, and it gets pre-injected into the filter. And it is, I think it's a negative base, and radium is a positive base, so these 2 would latch on in the filter, and then they would be backwashed. It will not make our filter hot, in a sense, they said, because we backwash weekly. The only problem is that backwater waste goes down to Brad's treatment plant, and he will probably get it in, I would say, significant. We're like 5.2 micropercuries, and 5 is the limit, so we're not horribly bad. But the reason that becomes into effect, we put in a generator, I want to say 2018, 2019, so that plant can run independently during a storm, anything that comes on. Our problem is we have to run well 3. If there's a power outage citywide, we can run that well legally for 30 days. And then after that, we have to have a public notice that we're running a well that has a radium limit. So we only run it in emergency. It gets run like 2 minutes a month, just enough so we can pump it, just to keep it active through the EPA.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the HMO will fit in your current garage and will move your vehicle out of there? Is that where it's going to go?
It can go inside the plant. The other, where I park my vehicle, will be another cell, so we'll have 2 5-cell in that plant. Everything can be pretty much put on the footprint of the water plant. The only thing that they didn't know, but if you drive by, there's a 35-foot stripping tower. They think everything can be handled through that stripping tower. We remove VOC, hydrogen, any gases that's in the water, and I have to pay like $230 a year for pollutant to the EPA, the stuff that we remove. But if you ever had well water and you taste that raw smell in there, rotten egg smell, we remove that so it doesn't come out to the district. But HMO will be basically a day tank, and then there'll be a monthly tank, and they'll feed into it, and then there'll be like a DSL pump, a small one, that'll just slowly inject this liquid in. We did a pilot study with Tonka, I want to say 5 years ago, and that's how long this has been going, but we were able to remove the radium completely down to nothing with just small amounts of this HMO. And Ottawa uses it, and Montgomery did, and Plano was using it, but they went into a membrane system, which was a lot more expensive, but the new subdivision that was put in on the east side of town, they paid for that plant, so.
Okay,
there's the
just to reiterate, you're
plan.
saying that that HMO project needs to be done before we can do the Railroad Street decommissioning.
Yeah, when the new plant gets done online, I would highly suggest that the HMO get added into it. Could even drop the cost less because you got a company there doing the work. You're not bringing a company out separately to do this, so.
Right, we don't have it budgeted this year. We've had it budgeted the last 3 years, but we haven't gotten the traction to do it, so.
And could you talk a little bit about the building and the reason why we have to take it down, the well, even though we paid to have the pittings taken out, just so everybody understands
The old
status of the old building and the wells over there?
So at Railroad Plant, there's 2 wells, one inside the building, well 1, that's our primary well. That one runs about 900 gallons a minute. Just outside of it, about 75 feet apart, is well 2. And if this decommission happens, what they'll do is knock down the building, the piping will remain underground, but the wells will be below grade. The biggest issue when we went back to that risk and resilience, they weren't happy that the wells were exposed to train tracks. And if a train derailed, well, if the wells are underground, the train will not take the wells out. There's possibility, I guess, if it was really bad. But they want to put a generator there in between where the building and Nick's salt building is. That way the 2 wells could run independently, and we could run one well or both wells from that location during a power outage or just normal operations. Our new SCADA system that we just put in 2 years ago already has SCADA in the old water plant that we can move it. It's not like it's wasted. We can move it to the wells, and that way they can still communicate with our system that we have. And it's been a nice upgrade. We are able to live monitor, like on our phones. If we get a call in the middle of the night, we can look at it and be like, oh, problem's already fixed. We can look at it and address it in the morning, but most of the stuff we can look at in the middle of the night or whenever alarm system. But the 2 wells would have to get some work done to them. Last year, we just spent $45,000, I think it was, on well 1. Every 10 years, I try to have the wells looked at. So well 2 in about 3 years is gonna have to get looked at, and then another 3 or 4 years, well 3 will get looked at.
Okay.
The other SRF projects, the booster pump, that estimated cost is $2.185 million. It can be constructed in a year after the engineering and funding is completed, correct? And then 2 4- and 6-inch water lines. That's replacement of smaller service lines to improve the system. How many years would that take?
They said at least 7 years is what they were looking at. If you started, you'd have to have a company dedicated to come in and start knocking them out.
The estimated project cost there is over $10,786,000.
Remember, do the work, get the loan reimbursement, then we pay the loan debt. So this is how, it's not gonna be like probably a 10 million whammy in 1 year. It's gonna be as we do the project, so. When we talk about our capital plan and spreading things out over time, all these things will have to be readjusted after the budget's finalized. But that helps us with our longitudinal planning.
This is the cost of doing business when you have your utility. We've got to keep up with the stuff, and this is a plan to be able to do it. It'd be great if we had the cash to do that, but nobody wants to pay the rate to have the cash to do that.
So as we're looking at federal government, that with all due respect is slashing money, this hopefully will lock us in to get the money, and the rate is less than 2% for the duration of the loan, which is fantastic.
Right. Another project that was in our budget last year that we weren't able to complete was an interconnect with Plano. This was identified in the Water System Master Plan that was completed in 2024. Estimated cost was, I believe, 200, 250. It was listed but not completed. It just, there's been other things that have taken precedence. So it is something that would be it'd be a nice thing to have as a backup, to be able to flip a switch and be able to share water with Plano if they needed it, and vice versa. So I think it's a,
Yeah, so we have a lift station that brings all that service to the east side of the creek. So this gives us some redundancy in that system, so that if we have an issue, Plano can serve us. Plano has an issue, we can serve them. We've had this in our plan for at least 3 or 4 years now. And with development out there now, it probably becomes more evident that we need that. So remember, we service a hotel, now we're seeing some retail. So we've had this as kind of like a holding pattern until we feel like we actually needed to do it. And now is probably the time to do it. So it's just basically tying two systems together with some improvements. And it's a recommendation from staff, recommendation from engineering. Shows intergovernmental cooperation between the city of Sandwich and Plano, as we have with some other projects, our streets as well. So this is a good thing, I think, for both communities.
If you have to drive on the road behind the pizza place over there, I'm trying to think now, the Domino's, you can see where our well is, and then Plano's is about 300 feet away. So basically, this would be a hard pipe emergent situation. They'd put a water meter in the middle of it so Plano could monitor water going one way, we could do the other if it was billing either to committee. But basically, it'd be either electronically or a physical valve that we would go spin a mainline valve, open our system, open theirs. Our pressures were within like 5 to 6 PSI when we did the study, so there wouldn't be like a big surge into Plano. Our system's actually a little higher than Plano's, but they actually kind of needed it last year. A contractor hit a water service back about 2 properties from Domino's, and they almost had to shut down the water on their side because it was such a bad contractor ripped a pipe.
Easily could be us.
Huh? And
Easily could be
right
us.
now, from Duvick Avenue, we have one 10-inch main that feeds everything to the east. And then it splits off and branches. We don't have a redundant loop back there. We did run some water main around Griswold Springs, but that stops at the body shop, and I think Johnson has a car business dealership there, but that's where our water main ends right there. So in the future, I guess, it might be advantageous to go all the way down to Sandy Bluff. And back when Tom Horrick was in, he was actually looking to see if they could get easements to go underneath the creek and go back to the back when the water park was gonna be in operation. And that was gonna be a big concern. And we did have 10-inch water main run out that way, but with the water park, we're having issues. But now that another business going in out there, the Dollar Tree also helps pull a little more water. But A and B is on the end of the line, and we have to go out that way monthly, basically, and open that fire hydrant to run to keep chlorinated water out there to meet 0.5 milligrams per liter is the EPA's minimum standard.
So just to confirm, these are in the budget, or they're not? Because I'm not seeing them listed.
no, the actual
And that's the-
costs of them are not.
Okay.
What's in there right now is just the engineering. I'm recommending that we leave the $300,000 of engineering in there for the decommissioning of the wastewater, or the water treatment plant. And then the other 2 we hold on, just because that's gonna, unless we're going to do them all at once, but I can't see doing them all at once. We gotta get approval and everything else. We need the money
Correct.
so we can do the engineering up front,
Yep.
so that we can then be
I just wanted to make
reimbursed
sure,
for the
'cause
engineering.
Yeah, we don't want to get out in front
We've
of the
talked 2 different
loan.
ways now on this specific area, and I just wanted to make
So we had more
sure.
information, Fred, on Friday, so we don't want to get out ahead of the loan, so.
No,
the-
I hear
The
ya.
comment was,
This-
is to get the loan, we had to do the engineering, so we put this as a project, so we're dedicated to the loan process, and that lets us move forward if we get it as the primary project with the decommissioning, the water, the HMO.
So what are we saying that this capital improvement line item's gonna be then?
300,000, we're taking out the other 2 projects, the water lines and the, what's the other one in there, Jeff?
Because right now, the Main Street water main upgrade is in there.
That's,
Main Street has to be in there.
That's
That has to
1.5
be in there,
million.
right,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, that project does, but not the other one, so we're looking at taking out the booster pump for 100 grand, and I think the replacement lines for 130,000, those are both preliminary engineering,
Okay.
right? Is that correct, Jeff, Angie? Okay. That was from a conference call Friday. We needed further clarification on the loan process to make sure we reported correctly here today.
So a reduction of 230,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Main Street's costing the water department quite a bit more money than we expected with that 1.5 million. But it's needed. I mean, Main Street only has a 4-inch water main. There's no or hydrants on Main Street. They're all on secondary streets, so it'd be like Latham. There'll probably be like 8 or 9 hydrants that are added basically every block all the way up there, and water flow. So if there is any building in the future, if Main Street gets ran out, let's say to Pratt Road, that 10-inch or 12-inch water main can be extended all that way and then looped around to West Sandwich Road, if there's any development to the north or to the west.
Yeah, the one thing that I wish we had in here was more of the automatic meter installation for reads.
I'm bringing that up, just, it's not in here,
Okay.
but yes.
Because that's operational efficiency, utilization of staff, billing, timeliness,
I sent an
monthly
email to
billing
Karsta.
versus quarterly billing. I mean, it all impacts everybody, so.
I talked with her because we had questioning on some bills and some timing. I have another set of 500 W meters, which are from Itron, that is capable to read on the ComEd circuit. And what that does, we ordered these back in October. We still haven't received them yet. They're saying that I'll get shipment date the 1st of April. And what that'll do for the city of Sandwich is I have ComEd and Itron coming in to give a presentation to you guys to do a whole city-wide done. And then basically, once these meters get installed, it'll be an outside company. They said they'd bring in like 8 to 10 guys and be switching them out 7 days a week to get these done. I don't know if it takes 6 months, a year to get this switched over. But that way it would give City Hall and the homeowner the ability to look at their water meter usage and get notifications if they had leaks. Instead of going like Bill or some people that had to go 3 months until we find out that had a leak, then you have a high water bill, and now you're dealing with that. So I'm gonna have them 2 companies come in here, hopefully within a couple weeks, and they can give a presentation on this. The money's not there right now, but I did have the money in this past budget.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's in this year's budget.
Yeah.
And the timing's April, so.
I have about $18,000 of them meters. That's all I could buy, but it's taken this long to get them here. But it's new age technology. They actually came 2 weeks ago and showed me. It's a little bigger inside unit than what we normally have, but basically, it only has to read from that meter to the ComEd meter when this system goes on. It can still be read with our system, with our handheld units that we walk by with. It's the same radio frequency. It's just when they push a button, that'll automatically go to ComEd, and then that takes our reading completely out of it. Our guys won't ever have to go out. The only thing that we'll have to do is go look at repairs, leaks. If Adam had a leak at his house, his phone would get alerted, said, hey, you've had a leak for 24 hours. You need to go look. And then if he can't figure it out, then we get called in.
Yeah, now you have the meter that has the red dial on it. If you
Yep.
go see if there's a leak, if you have one of those installed. So there is some systems out there. This will save, how much do you think it would save us on the walking time to read meters then? Because that's the opposite of the cost savings.
The big thing right now, depending on what section we read, we spend 3 days, like in the larger sections, 1 day in the 300 section, which is my section, be Ward 2, but wards.
Every 3 months, 3 times 4 is 12 days a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian and I did an ROI on it. It was going to pay back within like 2 years, 100%.
Yeah.
So.
And the revenue, and even for the people in the city of Sandwich, it would help them so much more, being able to get monthly bills and then Carson, a couple of us, we talked, might even be able to outsource our billing and not have Lisa do this, because it'd be tough to do the whole town in 1 month. They have outsourcing companies that could do this, and I'm not saying we need to ship out everything, but I think it'd be a good thing to have another company looking at our billing.
Yeah, Fred brought that up last year. I mean, I
Yep.
think that's an option for us.
Yep.
I think those are all good things that improve lives, save money, reduce time.
I have just one question. I'm not familiar with that meter. Is that something that someone will be able to receive a notice if their water, there's a
Yeah,
detection
we
of
can,
water?
when we set it up, we can do like 3 things. That my office would get a notification, City Hall, and the homeowner. And the homeowner would be through an app, kind of like you were paying or something.
Yeah.
But it would give you an alert and says, hey, you have continuous use at your house. Typically, that'd be like a toilet sticking or something broke.
Right.
Unfortunately, this fall, we had a couple houses with crawl spaces that had broken pipes in it. Elderly resident didn't know about it. Luckily for that, it's not charged sewer because it's not going down, but there's still a usage on the water. Now, with this new app that could be on there, you get notified within 24 hours that the water is continually used.
Yeah, nice. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, is that questions for Brian? Jeff, you okay?
I'm good.
I know, the budget's a tough budget.
If we're ready to move, I'm gonna go back since
So
we.
questions for Brian?
Oh, go ahead.
I had actually just a question for the water. In the, contractual services, we're going up $70,000 there. And I see one of the things listed there is a contractual operator. Why is that?
I can probably answer that, Rich. Like if I quit in June 13th is with
Not
my.
quit, you're retiring.
Sorry, retiring. And let's say I hire somebody that has a B water license, then it'd be a contract person, which we hired Ben from
JC.
Somonauk, and he did 1,000 a month. So I'm thinking that's where, but I know some of that increase came up for lead service lines, and that's where contractual comes out of. That's where that gets, a lot of that gets taken out of.
So our water would be like our sewer was, where we hired Ben to be the reviewer. Before that, between me and you, there was JC that did the plant. So part of that's factored into it. When Brian retires, he can't work for 60 days, so we're kind of stuck between that, needing a contractor or someone to continue the service. You want to remind everybody how long it takes to get a B license for a water operator?
Yeah, so if you're currently a C, there's 4 levels, D, C, B, and A. So if you're a current C water license, and if you want to jump up to a B, that's 3,500 hours. So
And it's
we-
just not 3,500, there's a tie into that.
Yeah, but it's actually hands-on process. There are some ways you can shorten that by taking the SEIU class. I think you get 8 months knocked off your time down there, or 9 months. I did call Rockford. Originally, I called Springfield, but Rockford office is now back in functioning. We haven't had a Rockford EPA office in probably 5 years. So they said a contract operator can come into City of Sandwich, and all he's got to do is work 1 day a week, spend 5-10 minutes looking over the documents, and that's sewer is much more stringent. I think it was like 3 days a week and maybe 3 or 4 hours. So they had a lot more, not saying water's easy, but they can look at our stuff and our process, and they look at the numbers. So that's kind of where some of that's going, Rich.
Good. And maybe this isn't, are we advertising or do we know what we're doing yet for this?
It's not for discussion this meeting, but I meet with Brad on, well, we discussed things on Friday, we'll be discussing more on Monday. We've had a contingency plan in place, and we couldn't do anything till, there's a couple pieces here. So first of all, he signs retirement paperwork, we cannot act until then. The clerk is the administrative agent for IMRF. She should have notified us that she got a notice for the city that he had filed for retirement, and then we can start the process. Do that before would not be appropriate. People change their mind all the time when they retire, a lot of other factors. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything from Denise. Have you pulled the IMRF notice of retirement notification?
I haven't received it.
I think it would go through Michelle, actually. Yeah.
But she's the, aren't you the administrative agent though? You
Yeah.
should be the one that logs in and sees the notice or gets it, so. That's where we need to be, but we talked on Friday, we're meeting on Monday, and we'll review our options, but likely it'll be similar to what we did with wastewater. I mean, it's hard to find people, it's difficult to get the license. We have people in the works, but it takes a long time, so.
And I wasn't gonna leave the city hanging either. I mean, I know it's, I don't wanna say like short notice, but I've planned to retire when I'm 62, and that's when I turn in April. And, but I have fortunately a lot of head knowledge, and I'm still willing to kind of share that. I have no intentions of leaving the city high and dry, and no matter what that happens, but they definitely need to get a B operator in here, not a contract operator. That'd be the long-term fix.
Yeah, but regardless of any employee, when you retire under the IMRF system, like most pensions, you have 60-day non-work notice, so regardless,
During that 60 days, I'm not allowed to have any city contact. I could like, hey, Rich, how you doing? But I can't talk
jeopardizes his pension.
any business type of stuff during that time frame.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for Brian? Okay, thank you. Anything else for our soups out there? Are we
Yeah,
gonna cut them
they're
loose?
pretty close to go. I mean, if they'd like to go, that's fine. I just wanted to run through again,
Brian, do you need to leave? You can take off.
just our big projects. We've talked a lot about Main Street. There's just some final information there. The Route 34 traffic signals, we had approved $138,000 for that through our MFT, our motor fuel tax in 22 and 23. The project's complete, but we are awaiting a bill from IDOT at this point. We've estimated that that bill could be as much as $82,000, so we've got that in there in case we get a bill for it, just so you're aware of that. Latham Street, we're trying to wrap that up. Again, we've been through this a number of times as to, you know, we're waiting on some of this information, and that's what's holding things up. Right now, we need to encumber some dollars for that, and we have a note in the budget, but we don't actually have it in the dollars right now that are calculated. Correct, Angie? Is that what we said? So it's in there, it's noted that it needs to be encumbered, but we don't know if we're gonna get that bill this year or next year, or when that's gonna actually come. Main Street, we talked about, let's see here, Pratt Road Bridge. This project is set to be bid in November of '25 with construction in '26. We've been paying for phase 1 and 2 engineering out of MFT. For that project, it's estimated that the construction engineering will be about $55,000, and we have qualified for $1 million in federal bridge funds to pay for that bridge. Problem is the overall cost is about $1.6 million. So this year, the only thing we really need to have in the budget is about $10,000 because there's an easement we need to purchase. We're working on that. As you recall, we approved that with HLR a while back, that there was an easement that needed to be purchased. And then we're anticipating in 2026, 27, it'll be the $55,000 in construction engineering plus probably $450,000 out of pocket to get that project done. So that's something we have to have on our radar going forward.
Who do we have to purchase the easement from?
Landowners adjacent, so when we do the expansion of the bridge, it gives us the full access we need. So the bridge may not be the exact same size or footprint, but we do need those according to legal and the engineering.
From the west?
With adjacent owners, just, I don't know that it's just to the west. It's probably more to have a bigger footprint that we have to do construction and maintenance, we have that space available to us. It's minor. I mean, we look at it's just what, Jeff, slivers or small pieces, but
That's my understanding.
it's stated that we need that, you know.
Any chance we can just swap it back with the township again?
I don't know, you're on the council and you voted on it.
Well,
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I know the background like you do, but, you know, that was taken on by the city. I'm not faulting you, just so you know. I'm just saying.
I get it.
You were only one vote that night. Yeah, it is an obligation to the city. You have to question Fred's return on investment for us, but it's an obligation that apparently was transferred to the municipality that we are stuck with. And this bridge is highly noted on the IDOT list of deficiencies. So we're right up there with, I think, the bridge on Governor Beveridge Road is the 2 worst in DeKalb County, and that's why we got the federal funding and why we got to fix it.
And it's too late just to close it? Have it be a dead end on each side?
I don't know.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea till all the farmers call us and the people up there, and that
Yeah,
development
we'll have you man the
expands.
phones.
And remember that development that's pre-approved 20 years ago, Deer Path, that's still valid on our books, goes across Pratt Road, and those people will be the angry people that can't go to the west from there, so. It also probably would affect the Sandwich Fairgrounds. I know that's not our concern, but that would be another impact in the overall expansion of the community, but that's the price. So the first step is we did some engineering. We found out easements we had to obtain to properly have room to maintain the bridge, build it, have access to it in the future. I think it's called Winding Waters is the plaque on the bridge. So if you want a nice name for it, it's the Winding Waters Bridge. And that's the price tag we're being stuck with.
And I know we do get some road and bridge tax.
We do.
But I don't know if that was upped when we accepted the bridge or
Wes can
not.
answer that for you because he's tracked that, or the history of it and the process.
I cannot answer that off the top of my head.
Well, not the amount, but you know how it flows, right? It's transferred to us and it's on the taxes through the levy process, and we've not set aside that money, we just accepted that and put it into our coffers.
Correct, because it's not technically restricted just to that specific section of road. It can go to anything streets
So
related.
we didn't say only this portion goes to the Winding Waters Bridge replacement, but it
Correct.
is something we look at and receive.
It is a portion that we receive, and
So if you want to know how much it is, Angie, I didn't bring over the levy.
Wasn't it like 25,000 or something?
A year.
Annually?
Yeah,
it's-
20,673.
So you probably have to go back to when we started having that show up on the levy is what we've theoretically accumulated. We may not be out money, I'm just being honest, if it's 10 years at that amount, that's $250,000, but we've not set it aside because of that response, so.
Okay. All right. Let's see, we've had some discussions about
But you can
land-
all go out there and cut the ribbon when the bridge reopens, so, even you, Mr. Little Brant. That's simply what they do anyway, so.
Okay. We've discussed some land acquisition in the past. Right now, for this year, we're really looking at, the only one that there's dollars in there for right now is for the purchase of the old Route 34 property there. There's an easement that runs right past where E.C. Pages was.
The old Tasty Freeze, if you lived here long enough, it cuts back through old Route 34. This still exists behind the trailer park.
Correct.
Cuts through behind E.C. Pages, as Jeff mentioned, and there was a little triangle where the Tasty Free was, comes out in 34. It has never been conveyed to the city or anybody else. We believe it's holding us up for economic development. And Jeff has taken that upon himself to try to have IDOT transfer that property to us for ownership and some.
We're waiting on a price from them. Before they would do the research, they said, you got to make sure you're serious this time. And I guess 10 years ago, we turned it down. So that's the reason it's in there, is that, you know, we had to give a commitment to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that whole corner, I'm just not talking EC Pages, I'm talking about the empty parking lot that it goes through. Anyone that comes to us may not have enough parking regardless, because that actually is state-owned property.
Correct.
So we're trying to just do what you do in economic development. You acquire land, you clean it up, you make it attractive and available.
Okay. We talked in executive session about an additional number of properties as well.
Which we can't discuss here.
Which we
so we'll
can't
move on.
discuss, which there's probably between $360,000 and
Demolition
$400,000.
costs.
Demolition costs, given the work that's been done with legal and some of our derelict properties, we did get our bid back for 724 North Main Street. That's $35,000 at this point that we need
That was
to
a
tear
public
that
bid
down.
opening, so he can announce that.
Yes.
It hasn't been awarded by
It
council.
hasn't been awarded, so I can't say who, but, you know, there were different bids for that. I think going forward, we're gonna need to have a set amount in the budget for demolition costs, so that when these things happen, because we can tear it down, then we're gonna, you know, put a lien on the property, but we may not see that money for a long time. So I think it's gonna have to be one of those things that we just have to have going forward.
So the bid opening occurred. Council can consider at the next meeting who they want to award the bid to, and then we can move forward with the demolition process of 724 North Main Street and hopefully mitigate that property for our citizens.
Okay. Capital budget requests that we have in for administration. Last couple of years, we've kept $50,000 in the budget for software upgrades. This was in case we could find a financial software or something like that. We are moving forward with upgrading to G-Works. It's supposed to be August that we do that. My suggestion would be that we reevaluate that in 2 years and look at maybe putting some of those dollars back. But for now, those are some dollars that we could reallocate. One thing I do think we really need to look at is a document management system to better organize our documents, both in our building department and our other documents to assist with FOIA. The product out there from Laserfish, there's also one from Civic Plus. So I think that we would want to reduce this line item some, but leave some money in there to be able to do something with the document management system. Okay. All right, now the tough ones. City Hall Opera House, roof and gutters. We've talked a lot about this over the last couple years. You know, our study showed us that to do it with copper and things like that is $3.1 million. While we all agree we don't need copper, we don't really have an alternate plan for that. So part of what was suggested from the budget committee was to leave $100,000 in there to retain an engineer and architect, develop a plan of work for the Opera House and then also the annex. So we could figure out how to do that correctly and have that be for the roof and gutters, also the HVAC system, which dates back to when the Opera House was renovated in the 1980s.
Yeah.
We spend a substantial amount of money just keeping that running on an annual basis. And, you know, with the rooftop units being on the roof, it does make sense to try to do the roof and then do the HVAC. So we're hoping that that $100,000 can help point us in the right direction there. We've also talked about the annex. It says 10,000 there, but this would hopefully fold into what we're talking about as far as getting a bigger engineer or architect to come in and look at the entire
This is space design
process.
and
Yep.
layout for this area back here so we can utilize it.
Well, and we've got heating and cooling in this building that needs to be looked at. We've talked about trying to build it out, and then also, like we just found out last week, yeah, that roof is not fantastic. So we do need to do some more research on whether we do a coating on roofs or how we try to do that, but there's certainly things that need to be addressed.
So here's the bottom line. This grand old lady next door costs us a lot of money, and it's ours. So we need to figure out how to solve it, and we're gonna have to have some lengthy discussions on that because it is on the National Register. People do know us. I think it's one of 7 remaining opera houses in Illinois. So it is a landmark, and either we set aside money or we start making small improvements, but Jeff's put some money in there that we can at least start the process. And the back room here just probably needs to be, remodeled, and that space design is important for us to plan for the future. It doesn't mean we have to take all the space. We could always rent it out. We could find some other use. If we reduce our file room, so we do have options. We also have the whole upstairs that's open that would need an elevator to it. So there's more space as our downtown fills, our options exist. So this puts us on the track for that.
Okay, and last, I want to talk about the motor fuel tax. We had accumulated motor fuel funds for a number of years. We've done a pretty good job of wearing that down the last couple. We receive about $320,000 annually for motor fuel tax. About 50 of it we earmark for street salt, just to make sure that we're purchasing that and using that throughout the winter. So street improvements, the Main Street Center to Pleasant, we've got $700,000 that's earmarked for that project out of MFT. The Pratt Road Bridge, we've got currently $31,000 that's carrying over from the Phase 1 and 2 engineering that has been taking place. The Route 34 traffic signals we talked about, there's still $82,000 that we're holding out for that out of MFT. And then the road program, we've just got the $22,000 that's being carried over. So at this point, if we spend those dollars, we're probably gonna have about a $400,000 balance in the motor fuel tax fund going forward. And we get about $320 a year. So we're gonna have to manage how that all comes together. So
It's not always feasible to buy your fuel in town, but if you do, this comes right back to us.
So
So if you're at home watching this today, buy your fuel in town.
buy your fuel local. So we kind of went out of order, but that's all the end of the slides that I have. So if we have any questions, I know I went a little over an hour, Mayor.
Yes, I told your slide deck had at least an hour in it because there are 60 slides. Okay, so that is our budget presentation. I will turn it, Fred, I'll ask you to take over for discussion and comments, and then we probably need to wrap this up with, ending with audience comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So at this point, are there any major concerns, comments that we need to take into consideration?
I don't have a major concern or anything, but I know we talked in the budget meeting about having Tony Eberly being paid for coming to meetings. And I don't see that in the budget here, so I wanted to see if we could possibly, some way, put that in.
Well, we do have the dollars in there for somebody to work on the website, and I was hoping that those dollars would cover that. But
So you're talking about
if you
the
wanna do
city
something
website,
different,
though?
Yes.
So,
He's helped with a lot of that stuff.
Right.
But we do have some dollars in there. That's similar to what the arrangement that we had with Tom Sikora was. We paid him on a monthly basis, $150 to assist with that. It was a similar arrangement. That's why that's in there. If that's
It
what we
makes him
want
an
to keep, then
employee
that's
if you
what
pay
we
him to
keep.
be here, and I'd probably recommend that we don't do it as long as he volunteers. Matter of fact, the chief's not really required to be here. EMA is not required to be here. If you've been here long enough, Rich, right, all the street superintendents came to every meeting and answered every question. We've cut them loose.
Yeah, you guys are lucky, you only had to come one Saturday.
Yeah. So, I mean, to
just
be here
feel
would
he
be nice,
deserves
but
it.
I'm not sure that's required,
I
or
feel
you
he
could at least give
deserves
a
He does a lot
consolidated.
for the city.
His other work might be
And I
what we
don't
need to look
dispute
at.
that.
so I mean,
Not to undermine or talk, that his work.
so
is not
instead of
good.
saying that we're paying Tony for every meeting that he comes to, should there be an annual stipend for that
And
position?
Tom he used to submit a bill once a month for $150.
And that was
which
for
would
the,
kind of
and that was
offset
for the
that,
internet.
For
that's
the
for
internet and all the
website side
service,
of
and he
things. So,
updated it and did all
yeah.
of that. So
That's what
Tony
we should do for
continued
him.
on, and, Yeah, we just need him to
Yeah,
submit a
but that
PO.
wasn't for being here, that was for his website
No,
work.
it's for the
Is that
website
being reimbursed?
maintenance, yeah.
Yeah, but I thought the comment was for him to come to meetings.
Well,
That's
for the
not-
EMA portion was something different. With him doing the website, like there should be some sort of compensation for doing a service that
Yeah,
may
he
be
becomes a
contractually,
contractual, yeah,
right,
maybe
so,
that.
does anybody have anything
They get
in opposition
1099.
to something of that nature? Like, I think Jeff, have a conversation with Tony and see what a reasonable dollar figure is, right?
Yeah, I think we should leave it. to
And then we
Jeff.
should mark and match that against our outside vendors of what they may charge for those types of services, and then we could take it from there.
I think I would be in support of something like that. I just think we need to be careful that it's not an actual employee type thing.
Yeah,
because
yeah. No,
there's-
I'm all for you there.
There are certain
1099.
things with
Yeah,
the
with the
state
FTE.
that we would be required to have to do with the website
Mhm.
and have to maintain it with the website if we had somebody employed to do that.
Yep. And as far as the EMA, I mean, it's currently set up as a volunteered position as the way that we have it structured. If later on down the road, it ends up going in and be absorbed as a separate line item within the police budget, then you might be able to do something differently. But I think the way that we're currently structured, you know, it would take a lot to try to maneuver and make that happen. But by all means, I think that if he's performing a service that we had been paying for previously, but not currently, I think it's something that we should be doing.
Right. I don't think his involvement with the website is as much as Tom's was, but he has certainly helped us out getting it up and
I mean,
going, and he's been a
the
tremendous
YouTube,
helpful.
the YouTube
He's
and all
doing the
that, I mean,
YouTube
so,
stuff.
yeah.
And, you know, we also
Technology.
have that part-time position in the budget for, you know, 15 hours a week or whatever, and maybe that's something I can talk to him about. But he does work a full-time job, so it's one of those that, yeah, we just need to figure out how we want to do that. So it sounds like we want to do something with Tony, an annual stipend.
Thank you.
No, that's a good thing to bring up, Karst, I appreciate that.
I got one thing I want to complain about. $250,000 for the ditches on Latham Street. We paid an engineering firm to give us that. No one's held accountable for them. That really burns me, that we're gonna do that.
Okay, so I'll clarify that for you. So the Latham Street Ditch Project precedes most people here. It was through preliminary engineering with our former engineer, Tom Horick, about how not to run pipes in there and come up with a country ditch. Where Fred lives, you can find the same ditch out in Dutch Acres. You can go drive it and find it, it's there. So this is not repairing of Main Street. This is trying to enhance it to meet some of the after effects that we've seen out there. So it was engineered correctly. That was the engineering plan that was approved through the council, through the city, through our engineers, through KCACOM. That's the end result. Now, after the fact, we realize we have a little buyer's remorse, and we understand that looking at something on the back like that and trying to figure out what the ditch looks like compared to what actually comes out is what we're faced with now. We've already started enhancing some of those ditches to make them more manageable. The street department knows about that. They've already addressed that with the citizens a week or two ago. And we're gonna try to continue to maintain those ditches while we continue to enhance them to make them easy for our residents so they can have their maintenance that they'd like. So
My
when you
point
s-
is that we avoid that in the future.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our city engineer's not here. I'm not here to throw him under the bus, but at some point, somebody had to sign off on that, as that was the plan. And the plan was appropriate for what they were trying to accomplish at that time. In
Yeah,
retrospect, we
and-
think maybe, you know, remember the road got widened. You know, you have lanes on both sides, and that made the ditch look deeper and less manageable. So the word is that it was not done wrong. It was done the way it was designed. Now, in retrospect, the design isn't probably what we believe it should be, so we're going back to approach those as we can. And 250,000 is probably not the number we're gonna put in there. We're gonna probably pull that back to something more of a phased process as we work from, probably, I think it's north of 6 in a few places, all the way down
Well,
to
and,
center.
yeah, and Mayor, my thought on that is that we should use that as an engine, like, figure out a game plan of how to fix it. The 250,000, I don't think is going to pay for remedying that situation, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Mayor, your statements that you made is that was an engineered solution. We knew that ditches were gonna go in there. I think when you put into perspective that if you look at a print like that versus a plan and profile, and you see the actual pitches and the depth and that sort of thing, it really puts it in perspective that we need to do a better job illustrating that. Secondarily to that, this is meant for stormwater management and detention, so just keeping it there and then letting it outflow. That was one of the things, the pipes that are gonna go in the ground are only gonna be able to hold so much water, and the ditches are holding a far vaster amount of water than what those pipes are going to be able to hold. So we could potentially end up with stormwater management issues after the ditches are changed and modified. So which is the worst of the evils here, right? So the solution needs to be really looked at wholeheartedly and make sure that whatever we put into play is actually gonna fix the problem twofold, the ditches and the detention capacity.
You're leaving out the part that we expect the homeowners to mow that.
Right now, the city is going to take care of that until a solution is finalized. That's been established. So we're not gonna mandate
Got
that.
a lot of right of way there, but they're only gonna do one little section.
Nick, come on forward and tell them what the
Okay.
letter was that went out. I think this is misinformation again, or us not knowing where we're at with some things, so. Make sure your microphone's on, please.
So I was asked originally to come up with a few different options to maintain the ditches. The 250K comes from option one, which was have a contractor come in and regrade these ditches to something that we would be more agreeable to. Option two was to have the street department do it over a course of 2 to 3 years, which that would involve us eliminating the majority of our work that we do throughout the year. So that's not really something we want to do. And then option three would be maintain these ditches via mowing and whatnot until such times we could find something that's going to make everybody happy on the council and as the residents themselves. Right now, we're going to maintain the grass ourselves. There's 19 homes that we're gonna need to do this on. It's gonna take probably a day and a half for 2 guys, or if we wanna put more guys on it, but roughly it's gonna be probably 40 to 50 man hours a week is what we're gonna spend on it.
And the plan is to hire part-time mowers to do this over the summer.
We've already pulled that out currently.
That's pulled out, but that was one option.
This year, for budget reasons, we're doing it ourselves.
Okay.
Then we'll reassess it. So it's option two.
So the mathematical, I'm just trying to figure a ditch, even if you weed whack that, I think I could probably do that quicker than that. So how did we come up with that time?
Last year, it took 3 guys, I want to say I put 3 guys on it and took them about 3 days to get it done. Our mowers, so the grade of the ditches out there, your average mower that you and I might have at home is gonna operate safely on a 12 to 15% grade. All those ditches out there exceed 20%. Some of them are up to 50%, which is, you can't walk up it. So most of it's gonna have to be done with weed whackers and maybe a push mower. So it's gonna be significantly longer than just going out there with a riding mower.
No, I completely understand.
Yeah.
The other thing is just get with Dick Wade with Little Rock Township, because he has a mower that he can position in that ditch.
So there's flail mowers out there, and we can use those, but they're not gonna be something you wanna look out and see your front lawn mowed with a flail
No,
mower.
just
Yeah.
get with him, because they are very skilled on how they run those, and they run very weird terrain, and
Yeah.
it looks very nice when they're done. So just throwing it out there as an option.
Yep.
But, okay, that helps me, thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Other questions?
Mine is not related to this particular thing.
Does that have to do with the agenda? It can only be what's on the
No,
agenda.
with the budget, yeah, I'd like this council to consider having a new engineer firm work for us. I feel like a lot of our money goes to EEI, a lot of our money goes to EEI. And I just feel like I haven't seen any other options, and I'd like to.
Everybody knows that I currently think EEI is soaking us repeatedly. They are. I mean, when we had the last meeting, and Steve came up here and said updating the document was a very easy thing for them to do. Very easy at $6,100. I think they're soaking us.
I would just like to recommend that we have another company come and pitch us and tell us who else they're working for, if there's other people out there.
So I wanted to clarify that. Jeff, do we know when our contract terms are up with them? Because we did bid those professional services out, so we should probably look at that and then figure out where we stand contractually and then
Okay.
go for an RFP. I'm just gonna be honest with you, it costs a lot when you shift different vendors, because everything that is engineered and designed and in the queues currently, when you transfer it, there's gonna be an associated learning curve. But I'm not saying that anything that moves forward new couldn't potentially go over to a different firm. It just adds to the complexity of the staff time and that sort of thing. But I too agree think that some of these costs are expensive. However, we don't do that work for a living, like the risk and resiliency document that needs to be put in for the EPA for the water side. $30,000 to update a document where we currently walked out of that meeting a few years ago with it fully operational. What has changed in the rules and regulations, what's changed with the city? Probably minimal on both sides. So that 30,000 to me seems like a hefty chunk of change, but there's also things within that might take some engineering practices that have to be included. I mean, I don't know 100% what it is, so it sounds expensive, but when you take that task, we don't have the internal resources to do that. And even when we had a city engineer on staff, that was still being contracted out. It's just more evident now because we don't have that buffer of the city engineer to say that he's reviewed or she's reviewed that product before it's been vetted to us.
Yeah, the city engineer, when they're our own employee, does not submit an itemized bill, so we have no clue what that person did for the $100 and some thousand we pay for that engineer.
And along the same lines though with that, I think, when we had our own engineer, it was a matter of, they would tell us as the administration what is reasonable, what isn't reasonable with the other engineering firms that we're having doing work for us. That there was the basic stuff that they already had knowledge that unfortunately none of us really have the knowledge about. So with EEI being our resident engineer for the city of Sandwich by contract, some of these things that we have been waiting on, so if we're staying with them, maybe what we can do is have a discussion as far as we shouldn't be in a queue if they are our resident engineer. So if maybe the top dog isn't the one working on it, someone else does. I feel the same way about our city attorney also. If we are paying money for this firm or this person to be here, we want stuff done. We shouldn't be in a queue, or if we are, we're like right next. We shouldn't have to be waiting weeks and weeks and weeks for things that if it was your personal attorney or if it was your personal engineer, you would get it because you need it now. That's just a suggestion, but.
And that might be another one that we evaluate too, is the attorney contractual services and what we have there. Once again, I mean, anything that's currently in motion to transfer that to a new firm would be extremely costly. However, potentially you want to swap vendors, you might end up taking anything that's new and moving forward. So there's definitely time and effort associated with, the city staff as well on that, so.
Right.
One thing I want to
But
bring up.
it's always good to check that. I mean, just staying status quo is not the way to run a business, right? So at some point, that's why there's term limitations. That's why there's, different things for contracts to make sure that you go and revet that versus just going with the same repetitive motion.
One thing I'm gonna kick this dog again is go back to the IEPA water loans. It was $20,000 for us through EEI. I had previously called Mike Reynolds at Plano before that meeting to find out what they were paying for it. they're paying for the same loans around $8,200. So I mean, if Plano's paying $8,000 for a loan application and we're paying $20,000 for a loan application, I'm stating we're getting soaked. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, do we know how many projects Plano was doing? Was it, because this was for 3 projects. I don't know if that was for 1 project or 2 projects or whatever,
Were
so.
they engineering firm, the engineering firm? Same engineering firm?
HR Green's theirs.
Same scope, same project, I think is Jeff's point.
Yeah, it's a necessary evil. We're going to always have to pay for engineering, whether we have a full-time engineer here, whether we have a full-time director of public works here, or I'm gonna try to continue to keep up with this. I will tell you, yes, having our major operations contracted out slows us down. It hurts us. It hurts this city, because when I need an answer, I'm waiting. I can make a phone call at 9 in the morning and I get a call back at 5:30 at night. You guys wonder why I can't get a council packet out until 5:30 or 6 on Friday night? It's because I get a call at 4:45 with the answers that I asked for 3 days earlier. So your point is a good one about being in the queue. It makes this job almost impossible because we don't have the people we need staff-wise, as far as our major players are contracted out. It hurts this city every single day. It hurts us when we're trying to do economic development. We're waiting for responses on things. It hurts us from a legal standpoint when we need an answer. It hurts us, even Wes, when he's overrun and he can't get back to me. I mean, it hurts us. And I think that that's something that we have to look at long-term. We can't solve all these problems in this budget, but we have to seriously look at that and figure out how to make this city run efficiently, regardless of who's sitting up here or who's sitting in my chair, right? Because if I get hit by a truck on the way home, here's my computer. Good luck. We have no contingency plan. The mayor is very educated in all these things, but it's not the same. And I think it's one of those things that we have to seriously look at for the long-term benefit of the city is a redundancy plan and succession planning. We have to look at those things. And, I think it's more than just, yes, we can be unhappy with EEI or we can be unhappy with our attorneys. That's fine. We could probably do that every couple years, go out and have a new way of doing those things. But I also know that our current attorney, they have a document management system that has all our stuff in it. I think they have stuff we don't have or that we can't find. So again, we're
And
dependent on
that
people
might be our own
outside.
fault through our record retention process.
Well, but my point is that we can cut them loose, but where does that leave us?
But keep in mind too, when we have contractual services, we're not paying their FICA, Medicare, IMRF, pension system, vacation, holiday, payout, insurance, right? You're not looking at the whole picture of, hey, Rich was the mayor, he knows that there's savings, and everything you look at, and you gotta weigh that out too. It's easy to say, they're soaking us. Well, I'll tell you what, when you look at the total burden cost of employee, you might wanna rethink the fact that sometimes it is. And Jeff's right, sometimes it's difficult, but I'll tell you, it's not any different than anything else I'm involved in, right? I wait for an attorney to call me back, I wait for an engineer, I wait for somebody else, that's, and you look at Wes's job, right? Wes, there's less auditors out there, there's less people that are joining these professions because it takes a lot to go to college, get the degree, the credential, the CPA. Sometimes I get frustrated with people too. I mean, people hear me venting, but sometimes that's just the world we live in. I mean, it does take a lot to go through this process. And, I can tell you the state of Illinois has a shortage of auditors in a lot of areas. That's just the way it is. It's easy to complain, but it is the reality. Now, can we go back and revisit these? Sure. We'll have a meeting with all of these. I've talked to Jeff about having these meetings, and every time we go to have one, it seems like things get better. And then they just kind of revert back, and that's also the way things typically are, So I heard your message, so we'll review our contractual agreements, and we have a lot more than you've discussed. Includes our technology and other places, so we'll do a larger review of that for council.
Thank you.
Okay.
One other question or comment. Are we going to, and maybe I'm getting ahead, but are we gonna have another budget meeting with the committee of the whole? As far as once things are final?
I think what we need to do is we need to true this up, and then yes, I think there would be one more. And this budget process is different than what we've done in the past, and it's giving us more true numbers. And so Angie and Jeff have moved things around to be where they really need to align. And that took a little bit of time, but I think when we're done with it, we're gonna end up with a far better representation of where money has come in and where it's expensed from. So, I have a better taste in my mouth about this moving forward. Not that anything that was done in the past was done wrong or anything like that, but it's gonna paint the better picture for us. And one thing that I just want to put here is that the time flow or time frame that we have with a lot of these projects, that's what's killing us, you know? So Latham Street with the state not closing out some of this stuff and some of those dollars and cents being held up here and thinking that they're gonna be expensed and they're not, we have to carry them over. It makes it look like we're not doing what needs to be done, but in all honesty, we are. We would be grateful to pay for those, however, they're not telling us when the final bills are coming through. And so it's a painful task. And I have that at work as well with projects that have been completed for 2 and 3 years, and you have to rebudget again and again to take it through just because you're waiting on the state.
I just have one silly thing. I just saw it was still in the budget, but we all know that we can't get a lot of the grants because of our capita, right? So I saw NCICG was still listed for $2,500. I hope
Okay,
you
Jeff, what
remember
did I tell you Friday?
I've got to touch base with them, but we may pull out of that. I
Okay.
mean, we haven't seen it.
No,
And
I'm
again, it's
asking
not-
for you
it's
to do
not
so,
their
please.
unwillingness to help us. It's
No.
our unwillingness of being able, not
Exactly right.
unwillingness, just it's a matter of getting them the
I don't wanna
information
pay
they
for
need
it.
to help us.
Yeah.
And, you know, if we don't want to spend that money, that's fine. They can do some grant writing, they can do some other things. I think they do charge for some of their time, but it's a resource. It was something we wanted to try. It's just, we haven't been able to dive into it as far as we'd like to. So if we want to pull it out, we can pull it out.
They have contacted us, right? They give us information. We submit projects to them, we've got nothing back. Either, it's like everything, like our economic development for the county is the same way. Either we up the price to get more attention, or we go down and get rid of it.
Yeah, and I think with Don being more involved, I mean, there's been things that have happened with his involvement here since he's come on board. I think we need to utilize him as a resource as to what would be a benefit and what to either go with or pull back from. So I'm looking for him to talk with Jeff to come up with a game plan of moving forward with some of those alliances that we have.
Thanks.
My last comment is I want the committee to review where we're putting our training dollars. I think some are misplaced and I can't tell what the outcome is. I do know there will be some different faces on this council. You need to up the cost to go to IML because more of you need to go, get the experience to meet other people, hear what other communities do, listen to presentations, help you with your planning. I went there, I think, my first year as an alderman in 1997. And I've been there again, but I think for other purposes, but I think you should go there to benefit that. And if there's new people here, you need your council to be trained, and IML is the place to go. That is our resource area, that is our area as elected officials, for council, for mayor, for administrator, and you need to change that budget because that is not enough for that conference to stay up there, to travel, and you need to reallocate how you're spending those dollars. All right, how many people have been to IML? Yeah, so if that's not even half, that's a problem. And you have to make the time, and you have to want to go there, and you have to want to learn and figure out how to run the city better, because that's where it takes place. I know there's other places. Bill goes to other conferences and training, but that's where you learn other things as well. And you get better ideas, and you can collaborate, and you see a bigger picture when you come out of that, so.
And IML does offer a lot of different webinars and
online.
other publications and things like that that you can educate yourself with, including their monthly magazine and things like that.
I'm not saying that's wrong, that's another resource, but there's nothing better than going in person.
I'm just throwing this stuff out there because, you know, as mayor, you get things directly from Brad Cole,
I get a
IML.
weekly update that I review. I send them to staff, absolutely.
That
You did the same.
basically,
Yep.
you know, and that information is what is great to have because that's the most current type stuff. And that's the things that when there is a change or something is being tossed around, you know what's going on, you know, so.
Yeah, you have all access to the same website. You have the resources, the fact page, everything you look at. We used one of those when we talked about the grocery and some of those other things, home rule. So, yes, but I do think going in person, you know, you get some better one-on-one content that you don't get to those by experts in the field. You'll see, used to be Ansel, Glink, Cope, and somebody else always present that's your legal area. But yes, you do also see what other products people use because it has a vendor location you should go to and see what else is out there. You can bring back to our staff and say, we should look at this product. I found great results. I listened to them. Here's a business card, and when we talk about, maybe looking at a bigger picture of who we invite to bid on things, that's where it comes from. Chief, you go to conferences, do you not?
Yes, I do.
So I think it's important that we all go to these, so my challenge for council, even if there are new faces, which there probably will be, you need to go, and it needs to be budgeted, and the budget needs to be reviewed, because I don't think it's allocated correctly. There just simply are enough dollars for you.
So with regards to the budget, are there any other concerns that we have?
Yeah, the 1% tax that the state it's coming to an end. Did you consider that?
It doesn't take
eliminated
effect
from
this
our
year.
budget?
That's a discussion we're gonna have
If we wanna
sometime this
reinstate it.
year, yes. The grocery tax is going away. Wes, do you wanna talk a little bit about that? Because you had calculated numbers. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it's dollars that we need to collect.
It is. I don't have the current math put together for today's discussion, but it's certainly something we can put on an upcoming agenda.
But the takeaway with this is that we, as a council, have the ability to impose that as a secondary 1% sales tax, where when the governor removes it, it would just be a transfer over. And if my numbers, or if I remember correctly, it was like between 11,000 and 14,000, somewhere around there, that we would lose potentially if we didn't go through with this 1% sales tax.
Well, let's just look, and essentially, the state legislature decided to take a revenue source from us without consulting us or care, and we have the ability to replace it if that's our desire.
Correct. And that's been on the council's agenda for a while. It's been presented to us to kind of think about which way we would want to go. But once again, we tend to not act upon something until it comes to the end. So I would say that hopefully within probably the second quarter of this year, we should probably come up with a game plan of which direction we're going to take, because that is a revenue source that is either going to leave or remain, depending on how we decide.
It'll be on your agenda, because other municipalities are starting to make their final decisions, and it takes effect in 2026. So it wouldn't affect us in this fiscal year, but we do need to have that conversation as a council, either April or May, just so we meet the timeline, because you do have a timeline you have to meet to pass an ordinance to basically replace what the state has diminished. And the state has its own budget issues. You can go on and see, I think they're like $700 and some million in the deficit, if not more. And so they got their own problems. We can't rely on them either, so.
Was there anything else?
Yeah, I have one thing, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm kind of against adding more bodies in the front office and in the building department right now. We've been investing more money in software. We're supposed to find in a private business, you find efficiencies there instead of adding people. And I think it's just time we take a pause on that kind of stuff, because we've done a lot of it in the last 2 or 3 years. And as far as the engineering stuff and that kind of stuff, everything we paid for as a city of Sandwich to one of these firms is a work product we paid for. And any reputable company, obviously, will give it to us if we change companies, right? So I want to kind of take that off. I mean, Wes can attest to that. Everything they've been paid for is a product for the city of Sandwich.
Absolutely.
The final item I'd like to address is, just so we know as a council, for all non-union employees, if we give 3% this year, that's 3% across the board. There's no differences in pay unless it comes before the council in executive session, and we have a reason to make a difference. So that's all I've got.
I was actually gonna comment on the same last part that you said there, the 3%, because I saw it one of the very first things you covered when we were talking about everything, and just to state, because obviously I misunderstood it last year, but again, if that does change, I don't want to be where, oh, that was just what we had discussed, that wasn't the final product. If there is something different with the final product, I want to know before we're voting on the budget.
Yeah, I would tell you that nothing done last year was arbitrary and capricious, right? We have studies that we received from Plano that did one that submitted to us on what everybody makes. So we made sure we were proper in our market rate for competitiveness and retention of our employees. We also have one that we do within the DeKalb as well as larger municipalities that we fit into a group with, so a percent across the board is fine. It doesn't reward those that do better work, which would be a merit system, which you could decide as well. But always adding across the board does not keep you competitive with other markets because our employees are not like across the city. They all do something different. They have different license, credentials, responsibilities, education they have to complete. So that's the only thing that I'd warn you is if you always try to do across the board, at some point you're going to not be competitive in different hiring areas of the city, and you need to think about that and review it. Across the board every now and then is fine. I mean, that's typical, but every now and then you do need to go back and look at your employees of what we're paying. I guarantee you, other municipalities are looking to see what we pay our employees because they're also trying to make sure they're competitive. So that goes both ways in any type of HR or employment scenario.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I think that is a 100% accurate statement.
But if you want to put in there that there's an across the board, then you certainly can amend that into the particular budget document.
I
so it's
want
for
the
clarity.
council to be aware before we pass this budget, who is getting what raise, is what I'm saying, period.
Right, and
That's the most clear
across the
thing
board,
I'm
I
saying.
agree too. It doesn't work all the time, but the council, we should go into executive session and the reasons for it not being one way or the other should be shared with the council and the council should
Yeah,
decide.
and that's true if it's specific to a specific individual that's above and
Yeah, legally
beyond
to
is
go into
what
closed
you're
session.
kind of getting at, right? And I think we have one potential person in the PD that might be impacted, and that's it, and then everybody else
Two.
was two, okay? So, but the aspect that
Well,
I think
crossing
we need to
guards.
keep two in the city, is what you're saying?
No, the police have 2 non-union employees plus crossing guards.
That's not what I'm at, that's not
Oh.
what I'm saying. I think there's just one individual that might have to have a market increase on their
yes.
wages, right?
Yes,
So
that's correct.
that's one aspect. The second aspect is, there's a couple different ways of doing this. You could have a merit pool, so a 3% merit pool, and it can be performance-based measurement, or you could have a straight 3% adjustment factor across the board. So when you look at compensations, we should probably look at this globally, as other municipalities have done, and have a market increase based upon the competitive wages. So Chief has presented information that states that certain people within his organization are making this, and other comparables are making the same and higher and higher and higher, or exponentially higher. Well, we can't go all the way up there, but there might be a gradient that job classification changes, and there could be a slight increase made to, and then monitor and figure out a game plan. But what I'm getting at is that you have a merit pool, and then you could have a cost factor in there as well. So to bring people, so you're not losing them, because we do have the disadvantage here that if they're paid less, but still doing the same duties that our neighboring communities are, they'll just leave us and go to the next community, because there's an opportunity for them to advance financially. I know that was a lot there, Rich, sorry.
It was, no, and I'm just, again, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just want to know.
You want
Just
the clarity.
knowledge.
And
I
so,
would
and
want
so
to
do I,
know.
because it was a little cloudy, right, last year, and so let's clarify that, and if there's a market increase for employee A and employee Z, why, and, how are you funding it type of thing.
Yeah, so the why was we used the comparable studies that were provided from different organizations to be competitive. We do that at the same time when we hire somebody, or we have them come in with experience. It's no different than any other market sector. I have one group of employees, I just gave 8 different adjustments to their pay to be competitive. One group of area, one department, 8 different changes in pay. That is typical, that is the way it is now. The other part of that is the minimum wage being driven up from $10 to $15 an hour has changed the thresholds for what you hire people. And you have to consider that as well, as that has occurred to us as a city. It really only affects our crossing guards, but it affects other places, right? So if you're paying $18 an hour, you can make that at Target. A lot of people go to Target. And we want them to work for us when they're the right employee and they fit our needs and our strategies.
And the other thing you have to keep in mind though too, whether you're private sector or public like we are, we only have so much to pay also. There's just that one pile of money, and that's all you can pay somebody.
Yeah, our levy pays for very little of how we operate. The rest of that is through fees, costs, sewer water rates, that's basically like a business for us. And the budget tells you that if you look and see where we apply our actual tax dollars. It's mostly $955,000 to our police pension to bring that up where it's supposed to be. And the other part of that goes across the board, but does not basically enough to fund practically any department.
Right, and to kind of go with what Rick said about the head count, I personally think that maybe we should leave it in the budget, but then restrict it, only because we are changing, like we are evolving into a city, right? We have growth, we have a lot of things that are coming on the docket. We have potential retirements that are going to come up where we're going to have to parallel employees so that institutional knowledge, as Brian said, what's in his head, right? He wants to transfer that. It can be transferred over, so we're going to have some overlap. The other side of that too is there are things that Adam has brought up that need to be updated within our municipal code for the building side of things that Ian really needs to maybe focus on that, because just take lot size, for instance. What we have is our 35% fillable lot on, for non-permeable on our lots. That is impeding our ability to have nice, bigger homes built because some of the lot restrictions, the minimum lot size is too small. And so you're gonna be putting these little small cookie cutter homes on where other municipalities have changed the minimum lot sizes, have increased what that percentage is. It has decreased their flood issues, and it has actually brought more attractable homes into the marketplace. So making a few changes on that will actually improve us. And right now, he doesn't have the time to be able to do that because he's processing all these bills and our invoices and permits and that sort of thing, and working with our outside engineering firms. So I'm all in favor of like restricting that, but I think we should put it in the budget and have it as a benchmark, and then figure out what our return on investment is for some of these things,
You can
and
just-
potentially do part-time versus full-time so that we don't have to go into the overall expenses with the pension and that sort of thing.
You can just vote to place a moratorium on hiring, and you can take the moratorium off in the entirety or the moratorium by area or department. You can do that by council vote.
So that's my suggestion on that, because I see both sides of the coin, but until we know where things are going, I mean, if the market takes a tank, our permitting drops, why would we hire additional personnel, right? It's in the budget, well, we got the money in the budget, we might as well buy them. Well, no, we're not going to, because it doesn't make sense. So, any other things with that? Or any other questions, any comments?
I have one comment, and it's just so that camera up there can see us talking about it, in case there's another for you. Gift cards. We need to talk
Not
about
a
it.
topic for this unless you're striking something from the budget.
Well, I'm bringing it up because we're talking about budget.
It would be the part item of the budget where you talk about the employee benefit, whether you increase or decrease it.
Okay.
That'd be my recommendation,
We
just
talked
to be
about
safe.
it.
No, I'm just saying you can address that part of the budget. It's in your budget, it has a dollar figure. You can say, I'd like to leave it, I'd like to
That's what I'm trying to-
designate it, but the whole conversation is not probably appropriate for a special meeting. That's my
All right.
point.
I will talk about that line item, which is.
It's in the very beginning of administration.
I'm sorry?
It's in the very beginning of administration.
Yes. Yep. It's 001-0005-755610, employee relations. Right now, we have $2,500 budgeted. That's what we had budgeted last year. I think that should probably be increased to $3,000 or even $3,500 possibly. A couple of reasons. One, because there may be an increase in employees. Secondly, although we were under budget this year in that line item by just under $200, I believe, we have some people that are 20-plus year employees that could be retiring. And right now, I mean, it's listed under there as employee recognition, but in the past, we've also had it where it was, holiday, Christmas gift cards. This year, last couple of years, we've done the luncheon. So
We use it for retirement plaques and
Yep.
recognition.
So any of those things that would fall under that employee relations line item or whatever, we might want to go up, like I said, at least $500 or $1,000 more just to cover that. That's just a suggestion, but if you want a correct number, and I don't know if, Just so you're not changing numbers around or anything, I saw in the tourism, which I can't find the new one, but I'm looking at the old one. I think we went up this year from 3,000 to 7,500 or something like that.
Right, it was, the income is shown at 7,500 and the expenses at 7,500. I think last year was 3,000 and 3,000.
Talking about the interest income?
No, I'm talking about the tourism. Under tourism, we had citywide events.
So we had the event, so the plain of bologna sandwich wasn't there before that event.
Correct.
That was added, so that's why it went up.
So it went from 3,000 to 7,000, but
And the food truck was new.
even if you, but some of those, like I said, Taste of Sandwich, yes, we took on some more costs involved with that than we have in the past. Did we do the chalk it up sandwich, or is that something that might be?
No, that was proposed, that didn't occur.
And they're all possibilities and could be good ideas, but maybe not 7,000, but maybe take 1,000 out of that and put it towards the employee one instead. So you can.
And you know, the thing is these numbers are estimates, right?
Correct.
And so we want to get them close, which Jeff has talked about. So increasing that line item by that little bit isn't going to make or break the budget. So, but it will be more accountable of what we're going to use that for.
Right.
And so I agree. I think that's a good thing to do. And then later on, we can then make a determination on what we do with it.
What we're doing with this
Yep.
specifically.
Exactly.
Because it could be everything that I mentioned, it could be none of what I mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on what the
No.
council wants to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, the tourism was added to add more events. I know that
Yep.
Brian used to run them for the fire department. If that doesn't occur, that's probably the food truck that someone put in there.
Sure.
Right, the citywide events is budgeted for $7,000 in revenue, and then it's budgeted for $7,000 in expense. So we could make it 14, we could make it 3, it's a wash either way. I mean, we're guessing at this point as to whatever we would bring in is what we would plan to expend.
So if you did it 6 and 6,
It wouldn't matter, yeah, we can
and
do that.
then put another 1,000 on the employee thing.
Right, but then we don't have the income for the other 1,000 for the employee thing.
I do want to point out though too, that we're talking about two different funds.
Yeah,
So
that's
Right.
the other thing.
So, and I'm just talking, I'm not a math person, so that part, I'm just saying, if I had money in here and this is what I'm just
Right.
saying, so it's even overall. So regardless of how we do it out of the funds, I think that one line item for the employee benefits or whatever should go up 5 to 1,000, but that's for the council to decide as far as whether it does or doesn't.
Does anybody have any opposition to that? I mean, I don't.
I just wish you'd just do away with all the employee relations other than milestone awards for employees and the retirement plaque. Well, that's up to you. So my advice about, my opinion on the employee relations is to do away with all of it except what you'd pay for milestones or retirement plaques. But it's your budget.
Yeah, that is one way of doing business, but I think that if we just make an adjustment in there for right now, and then we can make a decision whether or not we expense or don't expense. So it's doing the same thing, yet it's still leaving
Yeah,
it in
I don't know who wrote the tourism budget. It wasn't me. Was that also Don's input of events?
Yeah.
I think
So you
showing
know
our
where it came-
employees
so you know
some
where it
type
came
of
from.
appreciation is a good thing.
Yep, no, most definitely. Okay, anything else before I bring one other thing up? So the other thing that I want to bring up is it's on a revenue side of things. So we have properties within the city that we're not utilizing, that are not on the tax rolls, that I would like to figure out, what do we have? And this is a council agenda task, is we need to have the list of those properties, and then we need to figure out whether or not we need them, or we just want them.
You're
right?
talking about our property or all properties? that
Our
aren't?
properties, like the Hall Street and Main Street
Yeah,
lot.
we already
that-
have a list that came from our GIS system.
I understand that, but I would like to have that list brought forth again and validate whether or not we need it or we want it. And if we don't need it, then what should happen is it should go up on a sale block. There's no need to have a lot. I mean, they did a beautiful job down here behind Johnson. That looks phenomenal for parking. It's not hardscaped right now, but maybe later on it can. That's closer to the heart of where our people are. That lot up there, that's a buildable lot that maybe a house can be built and end up bringing everybody in the community something if there's a home that's built there. We go out by the fairgrounds. I mean, take the property that we even own by the fairgrounds. I know that there's a long-term plan, and maybe it could be a train depot or whatever, but is that better off suited to be sold at the current time and use those funds than to take care of what we need to do for the roof at the Opera House? I mean, it's being farmed currently, it's just sitting there, so that might be an option for us. By the sign shop, you know, we've talked about a barter system of a sign, of this and that, sell it, see if they want it. I mean, so there's others that we have, there's others that we're talking about, so it might be an offset, but what it'll end up doing is it'll take what we have as a liability of needing to mow and maintain and having slip, trips, and falls occur on them and get rid of those.
Yeah, 'cause that 25 acres you're talking about by the fairgrounds, it's a valuable piece of property. It's only bringing us $7,500 a year. I mean, if you think about the sale of that property or developing it into something, if we want to develop it, let's move. But if we're not going to develop it in the next 5, 10 years, I mean, 10 years, $7,500 a year, it's worth more than that if you sell it.
Right. And, you know, so that's just the one thing that I wanted to bring up. And that's a potential revenue source for us and a potential decrease in our liabilities. So, any other thing from the council? Anything from staff?
I have something I want to say. I've been city clerk and city collector for 16 years. City collector is a part-time position. This was pointed out in October. I make $18.80 an hour. The city hires part-time people starting at $20, even if they're unskilled. We had office help hired part-time at $22 an hour. Can someone please explain this discrepancy?
So you're asking, so you have two jobs. You have an official job and you have an employee job. I think you just asked the employee question.
I hold two jobs. They are two separate jobs, which you have pointed out that if I want to do any clerk activities, I have to take vacation time from my job as city collector, and that's not always approved, is it, Jeff? It's not.
I didn't approve any of your time off.
Some of it I've been holding off because we're waiting for an election, so that's.
And that's
fine.
the other question I have. Why are vacations not being approved until after the election? What does that have to do with the employees?
Well, one, they're in the next fiscal year. I don't know, we approved everybody else's time off in another fiscal year. I think that'd be typical in some places, but again, I don't approve your time off.
My son's getting married in August, and I don't have approved time for that either, so that's why I was waiting.
That I do
If I
approve.
did that wrong, that's fine, go ahead and tell me that.
That I do approve, but that should wait till
I mean,
the next mayor is decided.
we want to do, guys, if we want to do something different, let's do it different. I mean, I honestly think we missed the boat when we talked about the collector job before. By combining those two, we probably should have raised the rate for the clerk so that she could do the clerk job. But, you know, the thing of it is that our expectation is an awful lot to do for that job. I mean, if we're going to do the collector position fully, and right now it's $18.80 an hour, but it's for 40 hours a week. That's how it's paid. Now, if it was intended to be 40 hours a week, I don't know. If it was meant to be 30 hours a week, but, you know, is it fair for Denise to be here 40 hours a week as the collector and then do the clerk job? I don't know, but the clerk is the same as you guys are. You don't necessarily get vacation for being an alderperson or
I'm not
elected
sure this is
official.
the proper meeting to
Okay,
ask
fine.
about wages
Yeah,
and
but,
conditions of
I mean,
employment.
to go to that point, I think this is once again an opportunity for us to evaluate the position and evaluate the compensation, right? Because there's benefits that are paid as a part-time and collector position. So you put those into perspective, you might not make as much an hour, but you're still getting the benefits of, as a full-time person, which typically isn't put out. But I agree, like, let's look at this and figure out where we go. I'm not saying that you definitely don't deserve more an hour, but if it's 40 hours a week and you're still doing work for the clerk as the same time you're doing stuff as a collector. It's like you're double stacked and you got a lot going on. So let's table this and talk offline and figure out
Well, I
which
don't
way
think
we
it's
can go.
appropriate conversation for your special meeting agenda.
And that's what I'm saying. We'll table this and move it to another time, but
Thank you, Fred.
thank you.
But as far as the amount wise, if we're talking about budget,
Yeah,
because
but you just reviewed this, like, what, 4 months ago with these positions? I mean, that's a council discussion at a council meeting. You can revisit it, but you just had that discussion when you just passed an ordinance
we're,
to.
we're talking about budgets, we're talking about money that we're gonna be spending next year, correct? Right?
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about one particular employee's
We're
concerns.
talking about
that day.
everybody we're talking about.
Right, but this has became a conversation about one person.
Well,
So I
I'm
always
gonna
have the
make it
opinion,
budget where
talk
it-
about groups in the entirety and not always individual. You don't solve individual problems through typical administration and financial structure. You talk about it in the entirety.
all right, so can I say what I wanted to say, or just what you think I was gonna say?
Well, do I ever stop you? You say it anyway, so go ahead.
Well, it is a meeting that we're all participating in, so thank you. All I was gonna say is that, okay, this was just brought up. We got time to think about it, like Fred said. If anybody wants to change something or do something, budget time could be the time to do it. Again, 8 people, put something forward, if that's what they choose to do for any of these positions. We're leaving up in the air as far as what could happen with the 3% across the board, whether we do it with a sliding scale or whatever for certain employees or whatever else. So this is no different than talking about what someone is doing. You might be getting off on a tangent talking about other issues that can be addressed later during a different meeting or whatever else. But if we're talking about salaries and money and things like that, I think it is something that can be addressed during budget time and budget meetings before we approve something. We're gonna have a follow-up meeting, don't know when it's gonna occur. That's all I'm waiting to hear on right now.
Yeah, and so I just did the math here right now. So what we have in there for those 2 positions, 23,000 for the clerk and then 39,104 at that 1880 at 2080 a year. That comes to 62,104, which I think is the right number. Divide that by the 2080, that comes to 29.85 an hour. So although they're stacked in that same time frame, right? The clerk's role is really meant to be ancillary to the other job. And once again, we're kind of getting into it, but the true hourly rate, if you take the 2 and combine them, because they are combined now, is $29.85 an hour.
My point is you bound them and they're bounded by the municipal code. It's a little different than a typical employee. Typical employees aren't bound by the municipal code. So to change something, it comes back to council for you to take action to amend the municipal code.
Yeah, and once again, I think that this also goes back to the employee policy manual needs to be reviewed. We've talked about that when we come to the finances for the travel and that sort of thing. So this would be another area that we should come up with a policy on how we actually manage the time off approvals and that sort of thing, and how it impacts, and if you should do it 6 months in advance, but that's for a future discussion.
When's the follow-up budget meeting?
Jeff and Wes and Angie, when do you think that we might be able to finalize some of these
Yeah, the vote's on the
notes and that sort of
21st,
thing?
right? Is that correct?
Yes.
So you need enough time to hold the meeting, put the notice out, let staff respond, get you a final document.
Do you want to do the 14th, the off Monday?
Can you cut your superintendents loose out there?
Yes.
Guys, you can head out.
More than welcome to go.
Thank you for coming. Chief, you as well.
Does the
Staying for my safety.
14th,
Thank
April
you.
14th work? That would be the, in between meetings, we could do it at 7 o'clock? Does that work for you, Wes? I want to make sure that I have all parties involved here.
Yes, that works for me.
I'll be traveling that week. I'm not, certainly not to hold up, but I'm just letting you know I'll be out, I'll be
Okay.
out that week.
We'll just get it to you, Bill, and you can give comments. That's fine. We can read those as well.
Yeah, sure.
There's also the budgets over in City Hall that also is allowed to take any citizens' comment that'll be brought to the committee as well.
Yeah, April 14th here at 7 PM. Yep. That way then it kind of stays true with what we do with our regular meetings.
Okay, we ready for announcements?
Public to address the board?
Announcements first
Oh,
on the
sorry.
agenda.
I wrote all over my.
Next Finance Committee will be Monday, April 7th at 6:30 PM. The next Committee of the Whole meeting will be Monday, April 7th at 7 PM. The next regular Committee of the Whole, the regular meeting will follow the Committee of the Whole meeting. So Committee of the Whole is at 7. The meeting will follow after as we normally schedule. I just read that, Fred, because I normally say that, so there you go.
That's sorry.
If you do the audience comments, I'll keep your time for you. And I
Sandra
believe
Kohler.
I believe the notices are there. Do you have them both?
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to say, other than I don't think that y'all accomplished diddly squat. Diddly squat. Nobody was allowed to have a complete conversation. Everybody was being cut off. Nobody was taken seriously. What did you gain by a 4-hour meeting here today? Can anybody even come up with that? Email me. Because I sat here for 4 hours after going through all of these budgets for the last 4 months that change every 2 weeks. Even income changes every 2 weeks. Line items are not the same. And again, we come into a meeting today where they're arguing, there's no discussion. This was not a budget meeting. This is not a typical budget meeting. You have people saying, well, if you don't like how I do it, well, if you don't want to do this, you have people that can resign jobs and not lose one dime of pay. But yet you want to hold somebody over here that's been here 16 years and say, you're not worth $3 more an hour because we shouldn't have put the budgets together. Y'all voted on that. I pray with all I got that to save Sandwich, this changes. Because this is not a working council. It's not a working administration. And it just needs to go differently. I had a few things to say, but it's not worth it, in my opinion. You tell me the deputy clerk's worth $40,000 a year. Exactly how much was Jeff's job pay deducted when he resigned without notice? Why don't you take that back to city council?
Thank you. You're a very angry person, but
I
thank you.
am an angry person because you're wasting our time and our money.
Next comment?
Over there. Colton Otto, come on up.
I'm gonna make mine real short here on this. I just want to know if anybody did like a risk assessment, and the man's here himself, on what it would possibly be for our employees to go down there and mow the ditches if they roll their ankle or if they get injured, and what the cost would be, you know, for workman's comp, them being out, us being down an employee, as opposed to, you know, possibly fixing the ditches. That's all I really got. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Nelson.
Thank you, Alderman. Yes, a very long meeting. Lots of balls going back and forth. I think the two things that still stand out to me are when some alderpersons want to be innovative or find competitive numbers. We're so statutory with these agreements and the Illinois this and the federal that like looking at Sourcewell, if you're waiting 3 years to get a dump truck that I'm assuming y'all need now, right? Do you need a dump truck now?
You don't have to answer, it's public comment.
No? Okay. Because I mean, if I'm looking for a car and I need a car in the near future, and the guy at the dealership says, well, that's going to take a year to build, I'm going to go look for a different place to get a car. So I'm just mind boggled that we get tied into these agreements and then a 5-yard dump truck. Look, I'm not trying to bring in my own personal experience, but we had a landscape business. We had a dump truck built at International Truck and Engine Corporation. And I thought it was the next best thing since sliced bread. Well, we got hit by an uninsured motorist and that dump truck got totaled. That dump truck took a while to build. Well, when we needed another one, we snapped one up right off the lot. So, I mean, this is just a matter of decision-making and prioritization. And if you need a truck now, then somebody needs to get on the horn with Sourcewell, which, by the way, is an intergovernmental agency that works off of, like, basically they charge the vendors a fee. They do these agreements where they buy in lots for different municipalities. They were originated out of Minnesota, now they've gone nationwide. It sounds like a cool concept, but when they're making you wait 3 years, I don't see that as efficient use of our time or money. Furthermore, I heard out of somebody's mouth that we were gonna pay more for that truck because of their delay. Again, I don't buy that. If you entered into an agreement, you were gonna buy that truck 3 years ago, they get behind, in my world, that becomes their onus, not the taxpayer. So I just wanna see more accountability and more open conversation about, yes, being competitive, yes, looking at different engineering contract programs, but not getting so tied in and married to these groups or these organizations that we will just hang ourselves out for 3 years waiting for a truck. And one of the other things, and I did email the mayor earlier this week about, it disturbs me that the city administrator resigned without notice from the deputy clerk assistant job. So he did the deputy clerk and assistant FOIA officer. And this position was resigned, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that I don't see any adjustment of salary, and I haven't seen anyone else appointed to be the deputy clerk. So just again, just trying to understand what we're doing here with our numbers. And again, administration, the costs have increased tremendously in the last couple of years. I think there needs to be a freeze and there needs to be some meritocracy reviews. Figure out who's doing what, where, when, and how, and is it for the betterment of the city and my tax dollars. Thank you very much. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And don't forget to get a donut. There's a ton of them over there.
Very good. Anyone else that wanted to speak that didn't get a chance yet? Okay. Mayor, it's all yours, sir. Well, first, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking the time today. These meetings are traditionally this long. We typically have several of them. So I think that we've knocked out quite a bit of ancillary time today by having the meetings on the front end, also getting documents out to the council on the front end, so you had them to look at and could talk about that. So I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable. But thank you very much, and I'll look forward to having the amended budget put together here for the 14th, and then we can sit down and hopefully come to a consensus of moving forward.
Will we have that budget before the 14th, though, the amended one?
Yeah, so when do you think that we'd be able to get that back out, Jeff? I mean, and Angie and Wes, said a week?
I've tried to go through and keep up with the things that we've talked about and some of the note changes. So we should be able to turn around everything pretty quick.
Okay. Very good, thank you. So there'll be
Quick as a week.
ample amount of time.
As
It
long
won't
as
be
we
a
get it
Friday
before. I
that
don't
you'll
wanna
get
be
it,
like-
and we'll have a meeting on Monday, so.
If you're okay with Excel, we can circulate it later today.
Okay, thank you. Mayor? All yours, sir.
All right, motion to adjourn. Robinson, second Johnson, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 We're adjourned, thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Saving copy 8?
It's copy 8.
Okay.